261. Even if you die, act cool. The Citadel, known to some as the Tower of Angels, served as the home and monastery of the Dark Angels. It housed gargantuan warp engines and layered shield systems, and it contained relics and technologies gathered by the chapter over millennia. Built from the surviving fragments of Caliban, it was larger than any standard Imperial battleship, escorted by multiple fleets and squadrons of Thunderhawk gunships. Its armaments alone could annihilate a fleet. When Lion L. Johnson stepped from the transport onto the Citadel, his heart was heavy. Caliban had been shattered by his own failures. The fury of Zabriel and the other fallen angels had not been without cause. He had pushed too far and never gave the ones he exiled any explanation. After 10,000 years, to set foot again on the remnants of their homeworld, even a fortress made of wreckage, was more than anyone could take lightly. Azrael watched Lion and the Fallen emerge, his expression a complicated tangle: excitement, apprehension, bewilderment. So much had happened in 10,000 years. The Dark Angels had treated the Fallen as an unbearable stain on their honor, a secret that could not be revealed to the Imperium. They had sworn to eradicate them. Now everything had shifted. With Lion returned, those they had once hunted were suddenly his brothers again. Azrael wondered what their past had meant. Lord Lion L. Johnson. Azrael and a company of Dark Angels hurried forward and saluted. Lion looked at Azrael's weathered face and for a long moment said nothing. There were many things he could have said, but they would do no good. At last he placed a hand on Azrael's shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. The word stunned Azrael. In the old records, the Primarch had been portrayed as proud and unbending, a man who would not apologize even for a mistake. Azrael had not expected this. "It was my fault, Father," Lion went on. "If I had been more patient, perhaps the Battle of Caliban never would have broken out. Only Luther and the others should have betrayed the Imperium. They hate me because I exiled them to their homeworld and took away their fleet, because I denied them the chance to win honors." Silence. Azrael and the other brothers listened as Lion reflected on his errors. "Fate has given me another chance," he said quietly. "I will not repeat the mistakes of 10,000 years ago. Zabriel and the others are not guilty. Promise me, you will not hate them anymore." "I understand," Azrael replied. "I will order an end to indiscriminate hunting of the fallen. Only those proved to have fallen to chaos and to have betrayed the Imperium will be judged." "Good." Lion's shoulders eased. "Tell me everything that has happened to the chapter in my absence." Azrael nodded and told him everything. After Caliban's eruption, the surviving Dark Angels regrouped and gathered the wreckage to build the Citadel. Lion's disappearance during that battle had poisoned their minds. The survivors believed Luther and the Fallen had used some vile method. They hunted the Fallen, interrogated Luther, and searched for any trace of the Primarch. Luther, when captured, always insisted he knew nothing. He had been blinded by chaos and then redeemed by Lion, then struck down into unconsciousness. For 10 millennia, Luther was held under strict guard in the deepest reaches of the Citadel. All seemed secure until Magnus unleashed the Fenris campaign. The Demon Primarch's rituals caused the Sons of Rus to wobble toward Wolfen transformations. The Dark Angels, the Inquisition, and others formed an investigative fleet. Tzeentch's agents took advantage. They infiltrated the Citadel and the Fang, stoked enmity, and almost provoked full-scale combat between the investigators and the Fenrisian wolves. The misunderstanding was eventually cleared, but the Lords of Change used the chaos to rip open warp rifts across the Citadel. Daemons poured through, and the chapter was weakened. When the Great Rift opened, the Daemon Prince Makar and his Chaos Warbands attacked. The Dark Angels beat them back, but in the carnage, Luther's cell was breached, and he vanished. Lion listened with a calm that would have been unimaginable in his youth. Where once he might have flown into fury and hunted Luther to the end of the galaxy, now he analyzed and planned. "I will bring him back," he said without heat. The players had accompanied Lion into the Citadel. Dante had warned them beforehand, "Make yourselves presentable." The fiasco of their first meeting with Lion should not be repeated. Outwardly they behaved, smiling, taking in the sights, acting like visitors checking in. Of course, that appearance was a disguise. Where players were concerned, obedience was rarely genuine. While most mingled, Damo, Qi Tingjiang, and several others slipped away into the citadel's depths. They were not merely after the Dark Angel's sacred relics. Their true quarry was an old one device of enormous power, the Tucholcha engine. The Tucholcha engine possessed a degree of awareness and made warp navigation precise and efficient. Lion had found it in the Perditus system during the Horus Heresy, when Typhus sought it. Lion bested Typhus, seized the engine, and used it to navigate through the Ruinstorm and find Davin, the world that had fallen and sparked the Ruinstorm's fury. Destroying Davin ended the Ruinstorm and restored the Astronomican's reach. After the heresy, Lion sealed the engine away in the Citadel. The Tucholcha engine was an old one-warp artifact, like the Ouroboros and the Heart of Plagues. Together, the three could form a harmonic engine capable of tearing pathways between the material void and the warp and building a webway. The players understood the implications. Recovering the Tucholcha could win them glory, perhaps the highest honors the players awarded. "The engine has a mind of its own," Qi Tingjiang muttered. "I think it's avoiding us. The more it dislikes us, the more reason to find it," Damo replied. "Spread out, search every archive." "The Tucholcha is part of a webway tunneling machine," an Iron Warriors player called the most efficient neutron annihilation said. With it, the Imperium could build its own webway. They moved with zeal, but the Citadel was full of secrets and vigilant watch. Cloaked figures watched from shadows, the Dark Watchers. It did not take long before Dark Angels intercepted the players and ordered them back to the boarding deck. "Take them all away," one Dark Angel barked. "How dare you intrude on our halls? They must be punished so they understand the Citadel is not their playground." Hands grabbed. A few scoldings and blows were administered before a senior captain stepped between them. "You patrol here. Escorting the God Chosen is our duty." The angry Dark Angel bristled until the crowd was gone, and only then did he remove his helmet, revealing a smile. He was not a Dark Angel at all, but Boss Hongzhong, an Alpha Librarian. "It seems the Eagle Medal will be mine," he murmured, replacing his helm and walking deeper into the Citadel toward the secret library. A frantic search would be wasteful. The records were the place to start. Meanwhile, in the main hall, Qi Tingjiang, Damo, and the obedient-looking players waited. Azrael regarded the God Chosen and could feel a headache coming. Dante had briefed him on who these people were, a gift to humanity from the Emperor, beings who could resurrect, who resisted chaos corruption, and grew astonishingly fast. Their presence excused many things that would otherwise invite the Inquisition's wrath. After all, some of them had sung treasonous jokes about the Golden Throne. "You needn't worry about the Citadel's secrets being exposed," Dante told Azrael with a wry tone. "Many of these God-chosen are more heretical than your secrets." At first, Dante had been annoyed by the God-chosen's rambunctiousness around Baal, but he had since grown used to them, as long as they kept their hands off Sanguinius. Lion's gaze swept the hall. Primarch memory was remarkable. He remembered each God-chosen who had landed on the Citadel. One was missing. His lips twitched in a smile that did not leave his eyes. He wanted to see how long it would take Azrael to notice. Before Azrael could decide on a course of action, the God-chosen began to glow. Light poured from them, and one by one they turned into beams, shooting straight up through the Citadel's tiers, breaking through the roof, and vanishing into the void. "Where did they go?" Azrael breathed. Lion frowned in curiosity. Dante, unperturbed, explained. "The Saint must have summoned them. I've seen this before. The Saint and the God Chosen are linked. They can use one another as coordinates for cross-dimensional teleportation." The new understanding settled over Lion and Azrael. These were the Emperor's emergency troops, sent where they were needed at a moment's notice. "Where did they go?" Lion asked. Dante shrugged. "I don't know. We'll have to ask Shieling." On the surface of Cygnus, a war shook the planet. Mephiston's decision had been sound. When the Chaos God sought the Archangel's fragments, he abandoned any breakout and held fast, asking for reinforcements, calling for the Saint. A few hours after the call, the Saint arrived, accompanied by a force of God Chosen. Mephiston praised the Saint silently. He had known the Saint would not abandon them. Qin Yun rushed to Cygnus as soon as he received Jiling's alert. The Emperor Neuma Battle Group and other player organizations arrived and dove straight into the fight, easing the pressure on Mephiston's line. After cutting through a knot of daemons, Qin Yun approached Mephiston. The Imperial fleet is using the webway to push reinforcements through as fast as they can. Hold on a little longer. Mephiston drew out Sanguinius's fragments and held them up. Saint, I may not be able to protect these soul fragments. It's better if you take them. Qin Yun waved his hand. I'm no more capable. The Chaos Gods have their eyes on me. I can't handle so many threats. Helpless, Mephiston kept guarding the fragments himself. Qin Yun used a summoning skill. Beams of light rained down, and freshly arrived players appeared fully armed among the daemons. Hold the line, he ordered. Buy us time. One newcomer, dried bacon of the Golden Throne, found himself face to face with 4 greater daemons. He ground his teeth. If there had been one, he might have considered himself unlucky. 4, and from different factions, suggested something directed and cruel. Outsider, one greater demon intoned, yield and serve the gods. Dried bacon tossed his hair and smirked. A pack of nobodies. You're not worth recruiting me. I don't have time for this. Come on, all of you. He knew he might not survive. He also knew resurrection awaited him. If he died, he'd return whole. Even in the face of death, he would put on a show, if only to keep up appearances. He taunted the daemons, fearless and defiant. 262. The Black King returns. The 4 Chaos Gods stared at the outsider before them. Even though he came from a higher dimensional universe, his arrogance inflamed them. You are arrogant, one of them growled. Arrogant? You are the truly arrogant ones. Larogan drew his longsword and faced the 4 of them alone. You are formless things fed by human emotion, spawned from our fears and desires. Now you dare to covet Holy Terra, to lord over humanity? Have you forgotten who your masters are? One day we will tear open the warp, sweep away the gods, restore order, and make you pay for your sins, another thundered. Remember this, we are humans, the god chosen. The universe will ultimately belong to us. Larogan attacked. Brilliant golden light, an emperor's blessing, and the manifestation of his inborn power enveloped him. The 4 Chaos Gods struck back. For a short, furious exchange, he held his ground. Swords clashed, and the air itself rang with the sound. Energy and shockwaves rolled outward like waves. But 2 fists could not match 4 hands. Ultimately, Larogan was overwhelmed and slammed hard to the ground. Plague viruses ate at his flesh and blood. His new armor corroded. See you in an hour, he told them with a smile that only deepened their fury. These players were shameless. No, you belong to Father. Nurgle roared and thrust out a fat, rotting hand to seize the outsider's soul. The other Chaos Gods reached with their own methods, trying to claim it. Yet when Larogan's body dissolved and his soul rose, it passed straight through their outstretched hands and vanished, like it had never been in this universe at all. Even when Tzeentch wove ancient sorcery, he could not trap that soul. It was as if nothing in this cosmos could touch the essence of these outsiders. Their souls are mere projections, hollow echoes, not part of this place, Tzeentch observed, watching the battlefield with a new unease. These outsiders were more mysterious and more dangerous than he had assumed. Their advantage over the universe was comparable to the warp's advantage over Holy Terra. The warp had long been feared because of the undying, beings whose core essence resided in the warp, bodies that could be destroyed, but were only banished back to the immaterial ocean. These outsiders were the same. The cursed merely supplied them a vessel, their souls projected from a higher realm. If so, the warp was at a grave disadvantage. A race that could not be truly killed, however many times the gods struck them down, they would return, might ultimately outgrow the gods themselves. Larogan's death was only a ripple in a much larger tide. Rifts opened and endless demon hordes surged into Holy Terra. Blood rained from the sky, turning to rivers and lakes. The air stank of sulfur. The heavens themselves transformed. The sky had become a transparent window onto a roiling, chromatic ocean. Mountain-sized eyes and grotesques born of madmen's nightmares floated in that vividly colored sea. The void itself had become monstrous. Mists coagulated into forms thousands of times larger than planets. Falsehood condensed into illusory god bodies, satellite-sized eyes opening and closing in boiling nitrogen-argon, plate-length fangs, wings that could blot out the sun. The few crew remaining aboard the Baal's sword cried out in pain simply from looking at those 4 shadow-like presences. Even phantoms of gods could not be born. To behold them was to break the mind. "Lower the blast shields," Captain Nivea ordered, blood running from her eyes from staring into the void. Outside was no longer empty space, but a throng of flailing monsters. They flew without air, their wings beating as if through a planet's sky, and they came with the speed of void fighters, so fast even targeting arrays struggled to lock. Some bore harnesses dragging skull-car chariots with horned figures grinning upon them. Chaos Trader ships wove among the demon swarms. After the Saints' reforms, the Imperial Glory's speed, firepower, and defenses were comprehensively improved. On equal tonnage, Chaos ships could not match her. But the Undying backed the enemy, and despite their disadvantages, they could still hold the Glory at bay. The armored porthole shields slid down. From the ship's speakers, the state church priests intoned holy hymns to soothe the wounded, to quiet minds frayed by what they had seen. "Prepare all weapons," Remek Nivea broadcast. "Fleet air wings, prepare to sacrifice. We must hold orbit. If the situation collapses, all ships are to prioritize the Archangel's soul fragments. Even shattered, we must send the Archangel back to Baal." Alert. Enemy raid in Sector B2. Alert. Enemy raid in Sector A2. Send armed crews to those sectors. Establish positions at the access ways. Hold them at all costs, she barked. Inside the Baal's sword, it was frantic. Fully armed crews and the remaining Primaris Space Marines fought to repel boarding demons. Tech priests and their acolytes patched hull breaches. In the hangar, pilots gave the Aquila salute, took their fighters, spooled engines, and charged into the maelstrom. They knew the odds and the cost, but for the Emperor, they did not shrink. On the ground, the fighting was just as savage. The God-Chosen and the Blood Angels made their stand in a ruined fortress, abandoned long ago, but rebuilt by the God-Chosen with dimensional space, Gellerfield generators, power plants, turrets. Cannons thundered continuously to thin the demon tide. The artillery struck the horde and raised pillars of flame that incinerated multitudes, but such defense only slowed the flood. It could not stop it. Mephiston stood on a patched parapet as the bombardment rolled. The warp and holy terra had fused in the distance. A storm of light marked the rifts. Demons poured out like a tide without end. The God-Chosen held the front, teleporting in fresh warriors through pillars of light and shoring up the generators. The Blood Angels stood second line, protecting heavy weapons and vital infrastructure. "Charge! Seize Sanguinius's soul fragments!" a Nurgle demon bellowed as it plodded across the ruins. The God-Chosen in that sector had been annihilated. Plague-rotted bodies dotted the ground. Many God-Chosen fought to the last, but the sheer numbers overwhelmed them. Several severed heads were hung on banners by the standard-bearing demons. From the Nurgle host poured plague-bearers, Nurglings, rotten fly swarms, every filth of decay. Where they trod, the earth corrupted. Flowers and trees withered, the soil turned to rot. "This is not a place for you. Get out." Mephiston planted himself before a Nurgle greater demon. "Who do we have here? Oh, a little archangel." The demon's voice reeked of putrid sweetness. "I am Black Death, third lord of the third Daemon Hall. I smell the archangel on you. Hand him over." "You wish." Mephiston spat. "Go back. This is not where you belong. You are a disobedient child." Black Death's laugh soured. "Then we'll do this the hard way." The demons surged to overwhelm Mephiston, to seize the Archangel's soul fragments and crush the Imperium's resistance. "Hold them off. Don't let them destroy the turrets and generators." Mephiston screamed. The Blood Angels fired bolters while swinging blades. For a moment, the air became a storm of blood and gore. "For Sanguinius!" Mephiston cried. His staff flared with bright psychic light. When he slammed it into the ground, black and red lightning scoured the sky. The lightning struck great numbers of demons, turning them to ash. "That's some power," Black Death purred. "Surrender to Father. Embrace him, and you will be blessed and become stronger." "You disgusting fatso," Mephiston hurled the God-Chosen's insult at Nurgle. "Who would want to join you stinking gluttons?" Black Death paused, then laughed, then turned cold. "Such attacks are meaningless to me." Yet the insult had lodged. The daemon's decaying fat quivered in rage. "You will regret those words." He raised his rusty greatsword and charged to cleave Mephiston in 7 pieces and sew him back together. They collided in a maelstrom of psychic lightning and shockwaves. Mephiston, channeling the power of the Dark Angels, did not yield. He drove Black Death back again and again. But the Chaos Gods had not come to quarrel among themselves. Famine, scurvy, smallpox, cholera, and other Nurgle demons joined the field. Even Mephiston could not fight every greater demon at once. A single misstep sent him flying hundreds of meters, crashing among the ruins. "I told you, you will pay," Black Death rasped as he drew near to end Mephiston and drag his soul into Father's garden. At that moment, a spear, crackling with electricity, tore through the air. It impaled Black Death and pinned him to a thick stone wall. Putrid slime drooled from the wound. The other greater demons gaped. A Nurgle lord impaled and pinned. Nothing in this universe should be more absurd. A column of light crashed down. With a thunderous shockwave, it scattered every surrounding demon. Sheeling descended, clad in silver-white armor, a steel halo floating behind her. She stood between the Nurgle lords and Mephiston. "What kind of skill is bullying mortals? Fight me, demons." Her voice was ice. Mephiston stared in stunned surprise. Sheeling, who often appeared in a playful guise, had become a war goddess, facing numerous greater demons. "Your race hasn't been wiped out yet?" Black Death croaked. He pulled the spear free and staggered before her, intestines dragging, but his knowledge of the star gods made him certain of one thing. They wielded powers that rivaled the Chaos Gods and could bind the laws of Holy Terra. "You will be exterminated, but my race will not," he snarled. Sheeling extended her hand, and the spear Black Death had thrown skittered back into her grip. Filth along its shaft incinerated, the weapon returned pristine. She had thrown it only to keep Black Death from finishing Mephiston. "I want to see whether the gods who command the material universe are greater, or whether Tzeentch's might still holds superiority." Scurvy laughed, lunging with a demon iron sword. Others hurled blights and spewed virulent fluids. Sheeling became burning light. Holy power poured from her, manifesting as lightning and flame that cracked the sky. The laws of Holy Terra pushed back. Reality resisted the chaos and drove it outward. She held the Nurgle lords and beat them back. Mephiston rose and joined the fray. Still, the numbers were crushing. Qin Yun, known among some as the Guide, had no better way. He activated his divine state. Years of accumulated faith ignited into a raging conflagration. Warp energy was swallowed like a leviathan, gulping the sea, funneling into his body. Behind him, a sun of gold appeared, gold in human eyes, black in the demon's sight. Terrifying radiance washed over Cygnus. Countless demons screamed and fled. The sky rent. Golden flame tore a hole in the ever-changing heaven. Bound warriors fell like rain. Souls, long thought lost, called back. The soul fragment pressed to Mephiston's chest leapt free and coalesced into the archangel's form above the field. The dead son was reborn by his father's wrath and stood once more in a solidified body. "Has the archangel returned?" the onlookers gasped. "Has the Guide unleashed his ultimate? He's confronting the Chaos Gods." The players watched, astonished. Once the Guide had been a rookie, no gear, no skills, eating dry rations with them aboard the Imperial Glory. Now he had unleashed a world-changing power and drawn the archangel back. From the earth surged light, and one by one blood angels, radiant in white, rose from the glow. They were the fallen of Cygnus, summoned once more to fight for humanity. 263. A big win. The arrival of the Chaos Gods twisted the space-time fabric across the entire Cygnus system. Starlight dimmed. The surface of the main planet grew murky and lightless. Yet as Qin Yun stepped into his divine state, a golden sun of roaring flames rose behind him, tearing a rift through the Chaos God's domain. Like dawn slicing through eternal night, the radiance carried an oppressive force and a searing heat that washed over the main planet. Wherever that light touched, even the mightiest demons crumbled, disintegrated, and fled. Dark King, Calamity, Outsider. The demons screamed, naming the outsider and the cursed, cursing and howling as they retreated from the light. A sun, a new sun. Aboard the Baal's sword, Psykers staggered as if their eyeballs were melting. The navigator's third eye poured out golden light that drove off the malevolent phantasms and beasts clinging to the warship. "Fire!" Nivea cried, her face alight with devotion. In his name, victory. The machine spirit of the Baal's sword roared. The thinker system sped up. Gun batteries surged in power, and the fleet answered in a single, furious voice. With the Emperor's name on their lips, crews fired with everything they had. The void became a furnace sketched in mad, burning lines. Point defense arrays unleashed beams and plasma. Fighters plowed through demons, tearing them apart. Macro cannon batteries thundered. Time-fused shells detonated among the hordes, and the twisted souls of the unliving shrieked as they were ripped back into the warp. On the surface, the Cursed Legion moved in grim formation, guns blazing with psychic fire into the tide. The Blood Angels who had fought on Cygnus pressed on, advancing in the name of the Emperor and their Primarch. For a while, even the unending Daemon flood was held at bay. The battle had become something beyond a mere campaign. Do you think the Chaos Gods will try to blockade space-time, like at the Battle of Terra? Shi Lang asked, tearing a torrent of bloodletters to ash with a surge of psyche. He let fly bolts of lightning that sent a blue-winged Tzeentch daemon crashing. Does that even need asking? The old man said the Chaos Gods are arrogant. Where they can be unreasonable, they will be. If they ever start being reasonable, it'll be out of absolute necessity. Old 13 smashed a bloated plague-bearer's head with his scepter. Fetid ichor oozed out and summoned a cloud of slick black flies. He casually spat flames and engulfed them, reducing the lot to charred husks. Misquoting that old man, aren't you afraid of the great god of river crabs? Warmaster bellowed, charging at a daemonette. The daemoness had assumed her favorite guise of the widowed, saintly body. Aunt Juju, white dress, tear-brimmed eyes, a look so pitiable it struck the heart. "Brother, will you really lay hands on me?" she begged, voice trembling with false submission. "If you'll put your sword down, whatever you want. Bus, sofa, balcony, park, handcuffs, uniform, roleplay, anything." Her performance tugged at the most base sentiments, but Warmaster stayed stone-faced. He swung his blade. The succubus' astonishment froze across her features as he cleaved through her. Clang, clang, the clash of steel. Within a few moves, he decapitated her. Her head rolled and was crushed under a brass bull-mounted corn daemon. "With such pitiful tricks, you dare show your face?" he sneered, moving immediately to engage the corn warrior. The players were immune to the succubus seductions. Their bodies lacked those appetites in this universe. Even the most extreme temptations did not slow Warmaster. He had reached that rare martial state where women only affected the speed at which he drew his sword. The old gods are dead. The new gods shall rise. Year of Jiazi, auspicious under heaven. Shi Tingzhang raised his voice, firing his bolter while cutting down daemons. "Comrades, it's time to overthrow the Chaos Gods and make a new age. Charge!" Wristbro roared in unison. "Kill, kill, kill! Chop, chop, chop!" "Your faith terrifies me," one player laughed. "Damn, you'll have the great god of river crabs in the warp someday," another muttered. Ningba Ren smashed the skull of a corn hound with a warhammer crackling with arcs, then turned his bolter on a cluster of Tzeentch horrors. "The warp's full of monsters. If you worship a few more, who cares? Maybe the river crab god will be merciful and eat everyone, including himself." Little Alpaca chimed in after cutting down a daemon. "If the warp gods are born of extreme emotions, a river crab god might indeed devour rivals and then itself." Haigui nodded. "How about we try it?" Damo suggested. "Use a few sectors as testing grounds and see what forms." "Even those blue-skinned titans without many followers worshipped a titan goddess," Hua Zhenbao said, felling a Slaanesh daemon. "Holy Terra's not enough for you to experiment on, is it?" "Now you want the warp as your lab too?" 2P shrugged. "If you have too many fleas, what difference does a few more make?" The players chatted and joked even as they tore through daemons. With the Cursed Legion and the players' continual resurrections, Mephiston and the Blood Angels managed to hold the shattered fortress until Imperial reinforcements arrived. The Chaos Gods had planned to drag the Cygnus system into the warp and seal it off, delaying any aid. They had overlooked the combined might of the Emperor and Xiling. Using the passage burned open by the Golden Sun, Imperial ships warped in and opened fire into the void. They brought Blackstone monoliths, artifacts that, when activated upon entering Holy Terra, emitted full-power suppression fields to dampen warp activity. Blackstone could either amplify the warp or reinforce the veil of reality, depending on how it was used. Xiling's monoliths were crafted to suppress the warp. As they resonated, Holy Terra's veil strengthened, and the Chaos God's projection of power began to wane. Xiling pushed her own power through the resonating monoliths and drove the greater daemons besieging her back into the warp. The daemons were banished into the roiling currents. Even the Chaos God's figures began to fade. The physical laws of the universe reasserted themselves and could not be held down by their will. Nurgle reached toward the ground, sensing impending defeat. Once the veil closed, they would be forced back entirely into the warp. Desperate, he tried to break the unspoken rule against interference and snatch one last prize. Before Qin Yun could stop him, a spear of scorching golden light launched from the sun behind him, slicing through space-time and plunging into Nurgle's arm. Luminous fragments bled from the wound and fell onto Holy Terra. Nurgle howled in rage, and the warp churned with his fury. Storms were born, but those storms were confined within the warp. As Xiling tightened the veil, physical law retaliated with brutal clarity. The Chaos Gods were driven back. The veil thickened. Without an anchor, they could not manifest in Holy Terra. Nurgle's fury could no longer reach so much as a blade of grass. The golden sun behind Qin Yun dwindled after releasing its strike and winked out. The barrier between Holy Terra and the warp solidified. The Emperor himself found his influence checked. The veil blocked power on both sides. Warp daemons across the battlefield collapsed, unable to maintain shape. The cursed blazed away and dissipated into nothing. The heroic spirits, however, remained, anchored not to the Emperor, but to Qin Yun. They continued clearing the last weak daemons until Qin Yun withdrew his power. Then they, too, slowly faded. Qin Yun kept Sanguinius. It was only a soul fragment, but since he had returned, Qin Yun planned to have Sanguinius follow the players to search for his remaining fragments, accelerating the Primarch's rebirth. The fragment existed by the tether to Qin Yun. Apart from him, it would revert to a mere wisp. With Qin Yun's power, the Primarch's presence could be maintained. The Cygnus campaign was over. The luminous particles that had bled from Nurgle were collected by Qin Yun. He had assumed at first they were the Chaos God's blood, but when he gathered them, he found they were not blood at all. They were small, cubic objects in various shapes, covered in ancient script and glowing with a faint light. Before Qin Yun could puzzle much over them, a golden curtain of light unfolded and explained everything at once. These were the concepts and laws that Nurgle himself possessed. Qin Yun stared, stunned. Who would have thought the fat plague god bled not blood, but the very concepts and laws of his existence? These might be the legendary divine blood, or perhaps the Chaos Gods no longer had flesh in a physical sense. Their bodies were made of concepts and laws, which explained their near omnipotence. The Chaos fleet that had accompanied the gods, seeing their masters banished, chose to withdraw. The Imperial commanders refused to let them escape with the credit, though. Relying on superior firepower and speed, the Imperial pursuers annihilated the traitor ships within hours. As cleanup finished, Qin Yun received comms from Guilliman and the Lion. Connect them. It'll put their minds at ease. He knew his actions, drawing God-chosen and Imperial forces into Sinus, couldn't be hidden from the two Primarchs. He needed to report the situation and to bring up Talos and the Midnight Lords. He had intended to mention Talos's plan to establish a kingdom, but a distress call from Mephiston had interrupted him. Now was the chance to discuss it. "All right, Master, I'll connect you to the two Primarchs," Xiling said, her voice once again the childish lilt she often adopted. The contrast with her earlier sovereign radiance was striking. A hollow bloomed before Qin Yun, and within it, the figures of Guilliman and Lion appeared, staring at Cygnus where smoke still rose from the battle. Saint! Saint! Relief washed over them. Holy Terra and the Calixis sector government had reported that the God-chosen were sent to Cygnus as soon as they were revived, and that significant supplies were committed. A vast support fleet was racing there, day and night. Seeing the Saint alive and the battle subsiding eased their minds. How could such a massive conflict erupt? Lion demanded, eyes wide as he absorbed the reports showing even the Chaos Gods had appeared. Even during the Horus Heresy, the Chaos Gods had descended only at the Battle of Terra. To have them manifest on Cygnus was shocking. Qin Yun stepped back, and an archangel wreathed in white light, pure wings unfurled, appeared in the calm window. Guilliman and Lion's eyes widened. Sanguinius had returned, even if only as a fragment. Is this real? Lion choked, nearly incoherent with excitement. A head suddenly shoved past Lion and jammed close to the screen. "Father, is that you?" Azrael scowled. His own Primarch had been shoved aside. Lion flicked Azrael a warning look to stand down. "Sanguinius has come back. Wonderful. Our brothers may fight side by side again." Gilliman's relief was plain. "Roboot, long time no see." Sanguinius fluttered his wings gently, voice soft as ever. "Indeed, long time no see. Since we parted on Davin, I never saw you again." Gilliman winced with memory. Seeing Sanguinius's corpse had broken him. How could Horus have been so cruel? Sanguinius smiled, as if sensing Gilliman's mood. "Roboot, don't be late again. We agreed to face Horus together, and I was the only one left to fight," Gilliman said quietly. "You two only arrived after the Battle of Terra had ended," Sanguinius teased. "Roboot, did you disband my blood angels to build your second Imperium?" "You wanted the Astartes Codex," Lion piped up, glaring, and squeezed Dante, who looked on the verge of tears, before returning his focus to the screen. "So your aim was to legitimize a second Imperium, to take the throne while Sanguinius was away?" Gilliman, who'd been feeling somber, blinked at the barbed humor in Sanguinius's fragment. The Primarch's golden light exterior shaded with a black humor. "Damn, when did I ever want to create a second Imperium?" Gilliman thought, feeling both offended and oddly warmed by the exchange. Even a fragment of Sanguinius retained that old knack for cutting jibes. The conversation continued, memories and jabs flowing between brothers who had endured war, betrayal, and ruin. Around Qin Yun, the last of the smoke cleared. Cygnus had been saved, at least for now, and the players prepared for whatever came next, conscious that the warp's dangers had revealed secrets no one had expected. Splitting the legions was meant to keep the great Astartes from growing too powerful. If I hadn't pushed for the Codex Astartes, the Imperium would have already fractured, Gilliman protested, waving his hands as he defended himself loudly. "I'm not after the throne of the Imperium. When this war is over, whoever wants it can have it. I'm not taking it. I want to travel. This universe is vast, and I want to see it," Sanguinius teased, a lightness in his voice. Qin Yun and Lemon Russ smiled at the exchange. They understood Sanguinius wasn't really blaming Gilliman. He was simply opening the mood so it wouldn't be so grim. "So the regent of the Imperium actually dreams of being a wanderer," Sanguinius said with a soft laugh. Then Lemon Russ steered them back to weightier matters. "All right, business. Although the war in Cygnus is over, there are urgent problems to address. The influence of the Chaos Gods on Holy Terra is growing." "It seems a lot has changed since my fall," Sanguinius said quietly. "Those abominable entities can now manifest on Holy Terra without massive sacrifices. During the Battle of Terra, the Chaos Gods had needed blood, death, and Horus as an anchor to project their power into the palace world. Now they could manifest without such anchors. The implication was chilling. The galaxy could become the Chaos Gods' playground. Qin Yun brought up a projection, a brilliant map of the galaxy torn by a yawning rift. "The Great Rift has opened," he said. "The end times are here. The final reckoning for humanity approaches. If we win this war, human civilization can rise from the ashes, becoming the greatest light in the galaxy, perhaps even the universe," Gilliman said, clenching his fist with conviction. "If we fail, humanity's story ends. The galaxy could become a hell for the Chaos Gods to toy with." Sanguinius stared at the projection, brows drawn. "Is it really that bad?" "Yes," Qin Yun answered. "Humanity has been pushed to the brink. It's either rebirth or extinction." Lehman Russ added, "The reports from the Imperium's darker reaches are grim. Any starseer who ventures into the warp hears countless worlds screaming." "Hope remains, brothers," Guilliman insisted. "If we stand united, even facing the gods directly, we still have a chance. We have saints. We have Father. This fight is far from over." "We must cast aside old doubts and unite sincerely," Qin Yun echoed. "We can't let the betrayals of the Great Crusade happen again. The current Imperium cannot survive another treachery." Sanguinius's voice carried a trace of sorrow. "Horus fell because of suspicion. Father bore the burden of saving humanity alone because he couldn't trust others. We were all full of doubts. At the end of the Great Crusade, humanity's armies could have swept the galaxy. Everyone believed nothing could harm us. Who would have imagined Horus, War Master of mankind, would turn on his father with the Chaos God's help? Brothers killed brothers, father fought son, and the galaxy was plunged into war. We should not dwell on the past, Leman Russ said, rallying them. Practical plans. Dante, your descendant, he gestured to Sanguinius. We spoke of the current situation. First, we must gather loyalist forces within the Imperium's darker sectors to restore order. We will also build beacons in key systems to aid Imperial navigation and keep communication and travel open across our territories. Qin Yun nodded appreciatively. My projects to repair the webway and construct stargates are approved. These will drastically reduce travel dangers. As reforms deepen, we must protect the people's interests. Soldiers must know they fight for a better world, not a rotting system. New Imperial laws are being rewritten to redefine departments, cut administrative bloat, and improve efficiency. Equipment upgrades are needed as well. The opposition on Mars has mostly been won over, but conservatives on many Forge worlds resist Terra's policies. We'll need your help to persuade them. And the state church, Qin Yun continued, meeting some skeptical looks. I know religion doesn't sit well with some of you, but for ordinary people, faith is their bulwark against the warp. The church must be reformed, not abolished. The damage from attempting to remove it would be too great. Guilliman spoke next about the Indomitus Crusade. It had smashed many chaos plots and rekindled loyalists' confidence, but new threats exploited the Great Rift: orcs, tyrannids, and the Necrons. In the Naflis sector, Necron forces appeared to be plotting something vast. No news had returned from the battle groups and Primaris chapters sent there. In my state, there's little I can do, Sanguinius said with a touch of regret. Don't worry, you'll be up and working like a dog soon enough, Qin Yun said with a grin. As long as enough of your soul fragments are recovered, you can be resurrected. When the vengeful spirit fell, parts of Sanguinius's soul had been shredded and stolen. Full recovery wasn't necessary to resurrect him. Even a portion could suffice. Qin Yun reminded them of other recoveries. The one-eyed, red-skinned Ogren, whose spine had been snapped and yet was later partially restored. Magnus, who had seized control of the rubric of Araman and reclaimed all his fragments. If they could gather enough of Sanguinius's fragments, they could restore him further over time, and later, when strong enough, he could settle scores with the Chaos Gods and reclaim the rest. Guilliman and Russ laughed at Qin Yun's joke again. Sanguinius, who had been inward for a moment, felt a sting at the working like a dog line. Were they resurrecting him just to make him toil? The thought numbed him into silence. The conversation tapered off, and the Blood Angels, Mephiston and others, swarmed the returning Primarch, eyes wet with tears. A group of warriors who could rend demons with bare hands and kick Xenos into oblivion were now openly moved by Sanguinius's presence. Qin Yun tactfully led the players away to give them space. What a touching father and son reunion, he murmured. Larogan, newly resurrected, glanced back 3 times as he walked, curiosity written all over his face. The saint told us to gather in the open space to receive our rewards, Budang Goju Xuanzhan announced. Is this like payday on the drill grounds? Another player piped up. Did he tell us to put on our armor? Larogan blinked. The joke earned him 2 glares. Qin Yun had Shieling calculate each player's rewards. As before, he issued emergency missions with generous payouts to maximize motivation. He also weighed whether to use the authority fragments that had dropped from Nurgle as rewards. The fragments included life, resilience, tenacity, hope, strange pieces to be found among Nurgle's spoil. Macador said the warp holds both good and evil. The power of the high heavens is neutral and shaped by its user, Nivea observed. I think these fragments can be given to the players. They could make them stronger. So let's test it, Qin Yun decided. If the players could absorb those fragments and grow, his own power tied to theirs would rise too. Eventually, he might confront warp beings without relying on faith or the Emperor's power. Master, Nivea is curious about something, she added. Nurgle is the god of disease and decay. How can fragments of life and hope come from him? Perhaps the warp's balance has been destabilized, Qin Yun mused, studying the fragments. Over time, the gods devour each other's domains. The Old One's era likely had a more orderly warp, but after the war in heaven, the warp unbalanced and the Chaos Gods were born. When Slaanesh was birthed, he consumed many Eldari gods. Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle probably devoured aspects of countless other faiths. Civilizations like the Titau could birth their own entities from faith, such as their Star Strands nexus. But Xenos gods are rare in the warp. The likeliest explanation is they've been absorbed. The warp's current chaos could scatter pieces into unexpected places. With the rewards distributed, the players were elated. Emergency mission payouts for rescuing Mephiston were several times normal. Many players' wallets swelled. Commercial groups, Dora Workshop, MC Dynasty, the Academy of Agriculture, pounced, marketing to the newly flush crowds. Beyond credits, the most coveted prizes were the fragment rewards. The top 5 contributors received divine fragments. The War Master, who had the greatest combat prowess, earned a resilience fragment, drastically increasing his stamina and allowing him to absorb more punishment. Erlongu Kangbazi, who had been at Mephiston's side during the mission, took second and received a life fragment. His resurrection time halved, maximum health increased, and regeneration improved. 3 other outstanding players received fragments as well. There's a new gameplay mechanic, fragments increasing our caps, one player murmured enviously. How do you get fragment rewards? Another asked. Feels like a T0 tier is about to emerge. Will there be a godhood mechanic? Someone joked. If you can ascend to daemonhood, you can become a god. Is Warhammer a sci-fi game or fantasy now? Another groaned. After the distribution, Qin Yun hosted a celebratory banquet. After battle, people needed to unwind. Sustained tension broke spirits. Qin Yun summoned Erlongu Kangbazi, Budong Goju Xuanzhan, and several other players for a private word. Guide, they said, snapping to attention. I have an important mission to entrust to you. Will you swear to complete it at all costs? Qin Yun asked, solemn. As long as it is your command, we will give everything we have, Erlongu said, straightening. Please order us, Lord Guide. You must know we need to collect Sanguinius's soul fragments to fully restore this Primarch. The hunt for those fragments is dangerous. We need resilient, brave, powerful warriors to protect him. Can you shoulder that responsibility? Sanguinius now existed in a fragile form, his presence held together by faith and Qin Yun's assistance. Players were likewise attuned to Qin Yun. Being near a player bolstered the Primarch. The search would require players to be constantly by Sanguinius's side, so Qin Yun could support him at all times. I'm willing, Erlongu replied without hesitation. He had been active alongside Mephiston already, and a mission from the Guide was an honor. Unlike previous freelance ops, a Guide-assigned mission demanded complete commitment. I entrust you with this, Qin Yun said. Do not disappoint me. Guide, we won't fail you, Erlongu promised, pounding his fist to his chest. Qin Yun nodded and dismissed them to continue celebrating. The banquet lasted a day and night, a generous feast of food and drink. With the Imperium's reforms and advances in agriculture and technology, food was plentiful. The consumed stores could be replenished in days. After the revelry, Qin Yun set sail with the fleet. The battle at Cygnus had ended, but countless worlds still required liberation. He could not linger. There were more frontiers awaiting aid. Set course for the Eagle Metal, Erlongu said, standing on the bridge of the Baal's sword, staring into the black. Sanguinius stood beside him, wrapped in a halo of light. Mephiston nodded, and Nivea, acting as captain, gave the order. All engines, burn. Set a course for the lost Forge world, Pyrrha. During the Horus Heresy, Sanguinius had made a fateful stand on Pyrrha Forge world. It was likely some of his soul fragments might lie there. As the Baal's sword plunged into the dark, a player named Hongzhong wandered inside the rock fortress and caught sight of a massive metal construct. He smiled. I found you, Tucholcha engine. P.S. 5,000 words in one chapter. I hope everyone enjoys it. Deep within the citadel, in a rarely visited, dimly lit hall, sat a massive, ancient machine. It lay at the center like a prisoner in a cell. Strange energy pulsed from its core, casting a cold, fluorescent glow. Beside it stood a decaying human corpse, wired to the machine by a thick cable. A puppet, animated by the engine, turned its head to regard Hongzhong, who had slipped into the chamber with something like curiosity. What an interesting human, it said. I can't see your lifelines or the glow of a soul, the puppet continued. You do not seem to belong to this universe. You are from a higher cosmic layer. Hongzhong's face lit with surprise when the puppet spoke. As expected of Old One creations, they break the fourth wall too. The fourth wall? The puppet asked, tilting its head. You mean different cosmic layers? So you are from a higher dimension. I am curious, how do you see us? Are we characters in a game or ink on a page? Or is this a stage, and we, natives of this world, are merely the actors? Hongzhong quietly activated his recording function. He had to share this with the forums. The Warhammer OL players would eat this up. He wouldn't use his own ID. The Tukchu Cha engine being in his hands had to stay secret. I'm impressed, Hongzhong said. You saw through me at a glance. Most don't realize we come from higher dimensions. That is not my wisdom, but that of my creators, the Tukchu Cha engine replied. They once tried to peer into higher dimensions. They sent probes beyond the universe and received strange messages. Hongzhong's pulse quickened. A hidden storyline? A narrative that broke the fourth wall, like those absurd cosmic threads players joked about? Could some old ones have been trapped in special spaces while exploring beyond their universe, rather than truly dying? He had a dozen speculative images. Then, eager, he asked, "What else do you know?" "What do you want to know?" the puppet asked. "I understand most of the secrets of this universe. Can I ask anything?" Hongzhong's interest sharpened. "Anything," the puppet said confidently. Hongzhong grinned. "I want to pursue several fair-skinned, beautiful girls, long-legged, just turned 18, obedient to me, cold and distant in public, but giving me everything in private, who will also shower me with gold coins. How do I make that happen?" The puppet's eyes widened. For a long moment it seemed stunned, then its metal frame twitched as servos whined. The core of the engine pulsed angrily. The being that embodied the knowledge of ancient creators, the same mind that might explain how to conquer the warp or bend destiny, found itself utterly speechless at the request. "You're asking that?" the puppet managed, struggling to keep its tone civil. Veins in its synthetic face throbbed. "If you can't accomplish something, fine, but don't be so arrogant about it." Hongzhong stared at the puppet's twitching face. "If you can't do it, you can't. Why the big reaction?" The machine's processors hummed. Then, with a forced, almost mechanical laugh, it recovered. "Very well, let us speak of something serious." Hongzhong dropped the teasing tone. "Do you want to leave this place?" "Why would you take me out?" the puppet asked. "To find the heart of plague in Ouroboros," Hongzhong said. "I can get you out of here." "You can take me?" The puppet's skepticism was palpable. "I have ways," Hongzhong said, certain. "If you can leave, I don't care where we go." Hongzhong opened a dimensional breach and ushered the engine into the pocket space. The puppet scanned the cramped lane-away space with rising astonishment. It was a narrow, special dimension chamber ending in an abyss, clearly created by an extraordinary power. "This human has many tricks," the puppet muttered. Its opinion of humanity, long disdainful, shifted. Humans had seemed short-lived and myopic, doomed, perhaps. But now there might be something more, ingenuity and daring to match madness. An alarm screamed the moment the Tukchu Cha engine vanished. Hongzhong smiled faintly, then slipped away into the dark. With the engine secured, the heart of plague in Ouroboros awaited. The heart of plague lay on a world at the galaxy's edge and would take time to find. Ouroboros was easier, its fragments scattered across Caliban. Gather the 3 artifacts, form the harmonious engine, claim the Golden Eagle medal, and membership in the Hall of Fame would be his. By the time Azrael and his sentries arrived, the hall was empty. "The Tukchu Cha engine! Gone!" Azrael barked, suspicion lacing his voice. He feared a chaos incursion. Last, they'd traced a changeling who'd slipped into the citadel. Lionel Johnson looked around. He'd glimpsed the fleeting figure of the robed, diminutive stranger, and the memory of an unapprehended god chosen resurfaced. He pieced things together. "There is no point in pursuing this," Lionel Johnson said. Azrael's eyes widened. "The Tukchu Cha engine is a very strange construct, full of forbidden knowledge. We should not simply let it go." "Do not pursue it," Lionel Johnson repeated firmly. After dismissing Azrael and his dark angels, Lion walked to the edge of the hall and called out. Several small, hooded figures emerged, completely shrouded. "It's been a long time, Lionel Johnson," the lead-robed figure rasped. "Why didn't you stop that god chosen?" Lion demanded. "Surely you detected him." "We saw him," the figure said plainly. "We watched him take the engine." "Then why let him go?" Lion pressed. "We hope for more variables," the robed figure replied. "The end times are coming. More variables mean more uncertainty and more chances for victory. You think humanity can still win? Lion peered into the hood. Two faintly glowing eyes met his. Most prophecies point to our defeat, either the galaxy enslaved by gods or consumed by the devourer. The hooded figure bowed and slipped back into shadow. Lion stood long where it had gone, then turned and left. News of the engine's disappearance spread like wildfire. Demo and other players were furious. The three artifacts had been theirs to combine into the harmonious engine and trade for the eagle medal with the guide. Now it had vanished. Still, excitement soon focused on Lionel Johnson's declaration of a crusade against the Midnight Lords under Talos. According to reports, they were carving out their own kingdom in the Imperium's dark corners. Lion chose to strike them first, to warn other traitors that the Imperium would not be reshaped at whim. The players cheered. War meant action, loot, and glory. Azrael and the Dark Angels watched in stunned bewilderment. A loyalty to the Emperor so wholehearted that the god chosen spent their own fortunes on gear and treated war as sport left them ashamed and impressed in equal measure. Lion marshaled a fleet, and a week later, supplies gathered. He sailed with half the force Dante had granted him to strike the Midnight Lords. He meant to show why they called him the Lion. Elsewhere, Qin Yun led Imperial forces supporting Cygnus, crusading against traitors and Xenos across sectors. With no major foes in hand, he split his fleet to cover more ground and gave players full autonomy over missions. One god chosen, Little Alpaca, led his chapter to a world besieged by orcs and found a different kind of enemy, the Imperial tax collectors. "You brought no supplies," Little Alpaca said, astonished. "You mean to confiscate their remaining stores for the tithe?" Sergeant Pia, commanding the Kasserkin squad sent to collect, swallowed hard in front of Little Alpaca's well-armed battle sisters. The world's industrial fabric had been shredded by the orc invasion. City defenses were silent for lack of ammunition, and troops barely manned trenches. Still, Pia held to his orders. "Until the orcs are repelled and production restored, this planet will not hand over a single bullet," Little Alpaca said. "This is treason," Pia protested. "If Dammit 2 refuses the tithe, it's a crime against the Imperium." The Kasserkin behind Pia rested hands on their weapons, elite soldiers, better equipped and drilled than most. Little Alpaca glanced at them and forced a wry laugh. "That's not your concern," Pia snapped. "Then whose is it?" Little Alpaca countered. "You send elites to collect taxes while letting the people die? This is letting Xenos butcher innocents." A commissar stepped forward, voice flat and iron. "This war is bigger than one planet. Obey the orders or be judged traitors." "The Emperor does not permit his subjects to be squandered," Little Alpaca said. "If we cannot protect a world, what is the point of winning the war?" "Lose a world today to save the campaign tomorrow," the commissar replied. "Submit to the strategy or meet the Emperor as traitors." Little Alpaca laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Are you saying I would become a traitor? Did you eat green bile? So arrogant?" Commissar Brock had expected a routine tithe collection mission. Instead, he found himself facing a string of surprises. For one thing, his data slate listed Dammit 2 as a Class 2 tax world, developed trade, a prosperous economy, strong productivity. Yet the planet was under orc invasion. Its economy and output had collapsed. It could not meet its tax obligation. For another, a state church sister stood before him, and she did not look like one who would meekly hand over the planet's tithe. It was absurd to call her a traitor. After all, the state church and his office were separate chains of command. But her finely crafted gear betrayed an extraordinary background. Ordinary sisters did not carry such equipment. Still, Brock's mission was to collect the tithe. Failing to bring it back would be a grave dereliction of duty. "Are you truly so insistent? Refusal to pay the tithe is an act of treason against the Imperium," he said, repeating himself with the steel of his rank. The sister, known among the defenders as Little Alpaca, met him with a steady, unyielding gaze. "This world will not give any tithe until production has recovered," she said. "Besides, the Department of Internal Affairs has been derelict in its duty. They should have audited the planet personally to set a fair, reasonable tax." Her words left the Kashajan squad, the tax collectors accompanying Brock, exchanging bewildered looks. Not only were these people refusing to pay taxes, Now they were accusing the Department of Internal Affairs of negligence. Had they eaten orc guts? Brock's jaw tightened. You should know that even if you belong to the state church, I can have you executed for resisting tax collection. Then try, Little Alpaca replied, and turned her eyes to the Kashajan troopers. She did not look impressed by local NPC authority. They had a battleship. She had a combat barge in orbit. They could summon the Department of Internal Affairs forces. She could rally players. At worst, it would be war. Sergeant Pia, go back and inform your superiors. Tell them I'm still attempting negotiations and press them to suspend the tithe until production recovers. Brock stepped back, deliberately letting the tax-collecting squad leave first. Staying on the ground would at least give him an excuse that might spare Dammit 2 from being declared openly rebellious. He had to avoid a punitive fleet arriving while the planet was still holding out. This is insubordination, Sergeant Pia spat, annoyed. Paying the tithe is the duty of every Imperial world. Go back and report, as I said. Don't worry about anything else, Brock ordered again. Seeing the Commissar insist, Pia, still steaming, turned and boarded the transport. The shuttle lifted off. Thank you for standing with Dammit 2. Colonel Nanlu, the planet's defense commander, stepped forward and bowed slightly to Little Alpaca. We wouldn't have held on without our last reserves of ammunition. This might not be over yet, Little Alpaca said, watching the shuttle recede. But first, we must weather the immediate storm. Brock opened his mouth to say more, when a distant boom cut him off. A towering wall burst open, and a tide of orcs poured through. For the Emperor, Little Alpaca roared, hefting the greatsword that dwarfed most conventional blades. Go, for the Emperor! Kill every orc Xeno, leave none alive. The players arrayed with Little Alpaca were devout followers of the state church path. They rarely showed it in civilian settings, but in battle, they became furious zealots. Brock stared in astonishment. Fanatics, yet they'd refuse to pay taxes? He'd seen devout groups who would cheerfully die for the Emperor and still grumble about taxes. But this was something else. The orcs were no match. They hit hard and fast, and soon the green tide was cut down in rivers of gore. Little Alpaca did not want a grinding war of attrition. She ordered a decapitation strike to eliminate the orc leadership on Dammit 2 and end the threat. Meanwhile, back at ANO 601, a Class 4 inventory world and vital military supply hub, the Kashajan squad's report reached the Department of Internal Affairs. The managing official read the summary and scowled. Refusing the tithe is betrayal. Didn't they make that clear? We did, Sergeant Pia said, forcing calm. A state church sister refused and accused the Department of Internal Affairs of dereliction, said we should have audited the planet ourselves because we're responsible for both assessing taxes and protecting the citizens. They claim the department arbitrarily sets unreasonable taxes while civilians suffer. They say there should be accountability, Pia added, shaping his words to hit notes he'd had for months. Many worlds were suffering. Remote bureaucrats were setting impossible demands. If he could, he would have preferred a firefight to this administrative dance. The official's voice was cold. Auditing the Department of Internal Affairs? They must be insane. How arrogant. Mark Dammit as rebellious and prepare a punitive fleet to cleanse them. If they are disloyal to the Emperor, they will be punished. Commissar Brock is trying to persuade them. Perhaps they should be given a chance. Sergeant Pia ventured, but his plea was thin. A technician stepped forward. Sir, the planet's platform structure can't bear another load. Even if you attempted to collect the tithe, the logistics nodes would collapse. It would have to be destroyed. The official turned and fixed the technician with a stare. Whether the taxes are destroyed in transit is the department's concern. Submitting the tithe is an imperial citizen's duty to the Emperor. Refusing to pay is unforgivable betrayal. The technician fell silent. The decision was made. Request immediate dispatch of a punitive fleet. The official walked back into the towering edifice of the Department of Internal Affairs, leaving Sergeant Pia alone with the technician and the burden of what that fleet would mean. P.S. First chapter today. Still deciding which battlefield to focus on, so I wrote a short tithe storyline as a transition. For the Emperor. Xiaoyang Tuo swung the greatsword. With a shouted prayer, she met the orc chieftain's downward swing and blocked the massive battle axe. The chieftain stood nearly 4 meters tall, a hulking mass of muscle, and the crude axe in his hands was absurdly large. Every stroke sent the air snapping with explosive thunder. By contrast, Xiaoyang Tuo's figure was deceptively slight. She kept the build of a trained athlete rather than a walking tank. Her armor didn't make her bulky, but her strength was outsized. She parried and pushed back blows that would have crushed an ordinary man. Even Commissar Brock, who had seen countless battlefields, stared in disbelief. The orc chieftain was an elite among the green-skinned horde, and this sister of the church was holding him at sword's length. Clang! Sword met axe again and again. After one more cry for the emperor, Xiaoyang Tuo forced the chieftain's weapon aside, leapt up, and brought her blade down. The sword bit through armor and bone. The orc chieftain's head sailed away. His headless body twitched once, then collapsed with a thunderous crash. The remaining orcs, seeing their leader fall, broke and fled. Their morale shattered. They scattered under a sudden brutal counterattack as the imperial forces in the hive cities sounded the war horn and surged forward. The players, shouting battle cries, cut down the routed orcs until the field ran red. In a matter of hours, the assault had collapsed completely. The Imperium had won a decisive victory and pursued the remnants, intent on wiping the threat from the system. Thank you for your help. Colonel Nanlu's voice was raw with gratitude. He hadn't expected the reinforcements to be this effective, first pushing back the Kashajan tax squad and then repelling the orc assault, even carrying out the beheading tactic to finish it. In 2 or 3 days, they had routed a force that had seemed unstoppable. Xiaoyang Tuo bristled inwardly. Compared to other players, I'm slow, she muttered. The Emperor Numa battle group and the Hammer and Sickle battle group had been grinding quests relentlessly. Their pace left her behind. The Warhammer Succubus in particular finished global-scale battles in a day with no sign of fatigue. Xiaoyang Tuo felt her battle rose ranking slipping as those speedrunners pushed her down the leaderboard. Eventually, she might tumble out of the top 20. The main orc threat here has been eliminated. Our mission is complete. Sign here. I need to support the next world. She produced a data slate with the mission transfer for Demiton 2. Colonel Nanlu signed immediately with his biological seal. Xiaoyang Tuo uploaded the confirmation and received a new assignment. Support another world under attack by traitors in league with the Chaos Gods. Mission complete. We'll be leaving now. Xiaoyang Tuo folded the slate. Don't worry. I'll put in a word with internal affairs. Demiton 2 only stopped paying taxes because it was invaded. Colonel Nanlu's eyes reddened. Gratitude first. The god chosen had remembered the tithe problem and even offered to vouch for them. Demiton 2 had been abandoned. No reinforcements, and internal affairs still insisted on collecting taxes. Second came respect. These god chosen were relentless. They finished a battle, then rushed to the next one. The colonel began to speak his thanks, but Xiaoyang Tuo waved him off. No need. Time is short. We'll go. She called a transport shuttle to the battle barge and told the attendants to prepare for departure. Before the shuttle touched down, a message arrived. The punishment fleet of the Internal Affairs Department had arrived in system, bearing the mark of the Inquisition. The refusal to pay tithes had provoked a punitive response, and the Inquisition's involvement made their presence ominous. The punishment fleet locked onto Xiaoyang Tuo's barge and ordered the players to surrender or be fired upon. Colonel Nanlu instinctively stepped forward. Take me with you. If I confess, they'll go easier on you. Commissar Brock offered to plead their case as well. It hadn't been malicious refusal, but the result of invasion and chaos. This has nothing to do with you. Xiaoyang Tuo shook her head, then boarded the shuttle and flew to the punishment fleet's flagship. Minutes later, the shuttle set down in the hangar, and she disembarked. God chosen. Inquisitor Glide, the officer in charge of the punitive mission, widened his eyes and straightened, offering a formal Aquila salute. Junior Inquisitor Glide, at your service. It is an honor. Xiaoyang Tuo's expression was cool. Have you come to brand me a traitor? The God chosen represents the Emperor's will, she said. If someone is a traitor, then what does that make the rest of the Imperium? Glide tried to defuse the situation. This must be a misunderstanding. Please, God chosen, do not take offense. Misunderstanding? She snapped. While taxation is an obligation for every imperial world, the Imperium also has an obligation to protect its people. Ignoring a planet's objective conditions and forcibly collecting taxes under the pretense of loyalty is a betrayal. To hold power and neglect governance, to turn your back on a world that needs support and send tax collectors instead. If I hadn't been here, that world's inhabitants might have been slaughtered. Glide had heard the accusations leveled at internal affairs before, talk of the greater good and distant officials who never left their offices. He felt the familiar shame for those who wielded policy without seeing its consequences. I will follow up on this matter until there is a satisfactory answer, he promised. You will be satisfied, he added, voice steady. Days later, at ANO 601 Stock World, the punishment fleet descended. Inquisitor Glide ordered his stormtroopers to liquidate the local bureaucrats in that region and determine whether they had committed dereliction of duty by ignoring the suffering of the taxed worlds. The Inquisition's investigation moved fast. Over a dozen officials were pulled from their offices and rudely interrogated. The evidence was damning. Tax assessments had been calculated from outdated data, leaving prosperous worlds with little or no levies while the poor and war-battered were stripped bare. Whole populations had been siphoned of resources until starvation and rebellion followed. Imperial forces had put down many of those uprisings with brutal reprisals, fields littered with bones and blood in place of livelihoods. Glide stood stunned as the scope of the damage became clear. A few clerks and dusty ledgers had cost more lives than many insurrections. I've served the Imperium for 60 years, an elderly tax official screamed as he was hauled away. How dare you arrest me? I demand to appeal. No one answered his pleas. The arrested bureaucrats were taken for further questioning, and if necessary, for trial, to see whether they had colluded with chaos or simply been criminally neglectful. Meanwhile, at the far side of the galaxy, Qin Yun read the report from the Demi-Ton system. He praised Xiaoyang Tuo's intervention and instructed Xiling to award her with additional rewards, encouraging her to keep helping afflicted worlds and to tackle systemic problems where she could. We need to encourage players not to rush only for speed, he said. They should take missions as opportunities to change things for the better. It's been a while since a major update, he muttered. Many smaller patches had improved level caps and reward exchanges after version 6.0, but accumulating issues and new technologies meant a larger update was overdue. It's time to apply a new patch. Xiling appeared at his side, curiosity bright on her face. Master, are you going to release version 7.0? The rules in version 6.0 can't satisfy the current players anymore, Qin Yun said. Their levels are climbing, and some are already exploring beyond the Lighthouse network. We have to keep up. Launch version 7.0 and guide them properly. He waved a hand and a data projection bloomed. The players' levels were catching up with his. Once he hit LV22, half an hour later a whole wave of players would reach LV22 too. With the Emperor's blessings and new equipment rolling out, their combat power had skyrocketed. Ordinary traders and Xenos were no match. Players were beating traders and renegades wherever they went. With powerful gear, steady resupplies, dimensional travel, and a spreading lighthouse network, players no longer needed to stick with fleets. Most adventured alone. The Chaos Gods, predictably, were dangling blessings on weapons to lure them in. Qin Yun would warn them not to rely on those gifts. Don't be tricked into becoming Chaos thralls, but giving players some bait to drive exploration was useful. Things like the third advancement, Custodes level transfers, dignity fragments, and so on had to be teased. It was a major update, and a major release was needed. Xiling nodded, thoughtful. So that's it, Master. Xiling understands. Remember what I'm about to tell you, Qin Yun said, deciding Xiling should handle the rollout. If someone else could do it, why waste his time? Okay, Master. Xiling will complete the task beautifully, she replied, brimming with energy. Qin Yun quickly outlined the 7.0 features. Xiling produced an update announcement almost instantly. 7.0 version update announcement. Bang, bang, bang! Xiling makes a dazzling entrance in the sky. Long time no see. Did you miss Xiling? This time, Xiling brings you the long-awaited 7.0 update. Without further ado, here's what's new. First, finance. With the Lighthouse Network's expansion, the Imperial Bank has grown too. Loan procedures have been simplified. Hurry and take a loan to replace your gear and continue serving the Emperor. Not being loyal enough might invite a visit from the Inquisition. Second, weapon growth. After multiple optimizations and tests, this system is ready. Outstanding performance may attract the Chaos Gods to bless your weapon, granting it growth potential. Blessings are nice, but don't be greedy, or you might end up dragged into the realm of chaos and turned into a mindless thrall. Not fun. Third, free adventure. Players can accept quests, pilot ships, and roam the galaxy freely. Ancient ruins, old battlefields, planets hiding Necron dynasties, dangerous galactic cores. If you have the courage, explore them. Want secrets of the universe? Want ancient treasure, fame, and fortune? Set sail. Adventures await. Fourth, third stage advancement tests. Players may transfer into roles like Custodes, Adeptus Mechanicus Archmagos, and Fleet Admiral. Exceptional players can obtain dignity fragments with limitless potential. Play well, and you could become a true powerhouse. Fifth, prayer system. In areas outside the Lighthouse Network, players can pray to the Guide for help. Lost in the stars with no connection? Clench your fist and shout, "Guide, save me," 3 times toward the sky. The Guide will step on auspicious clouds to rescue you. God? No, just an ordinary person blessed by the Emperor. Sixth, time flow updated. Ratio set to 1:7. 1 day on Holy Terra equals 7 days in the Hammer 0L game world. Accelerating plot development. Soon you'll see how the universe heads toward annihilation. Those are the highlights of version 7.0. Discover more in-game. Lots of Easter eggs. Don't miss them. Daily thought. Even if you die, you must continue to give everything to the Emperor. Qin Yun skimmed Shiling's announcement. No major problems. He was mildly amused by her mocking tone, no doubt borrowed from players in Holy Terra's netizens. He looked at Shiling. She kept her lowly star god avatar, a delicate oval face like carved jade, huge eyes glittering like stars. How had this perfect star god lowly picked up human sarcasm? Had the humanity she'd absorbed started to override her divinity? "Master, is something wrong?" Shiling asked as she blushed under his gaze. "No, you did very well. Release it as is. Usual schedule. Release in the evening," Qin Yun said. He didn't want Shiling to turn into one of those numb, bloodthirsty star gods from the War in Heaven. A cute, teasing, human-like star god was interesting. Version 7.0 was set for release that evening at 6:30 p.m. When the time came, netizens on the Hammer 0L official forum got the update notice. Shiling's controls meant only verified humans could leave comments. Bots and scripts trying to grab the top spots were locked in a little dark room by Shiling before they could post. The site had become an effective troll detector, and users liked posting videos and news without being drowned by spam. The announcement had to be read in full before you could comment, so there was a short delay. Then the flood hit. Wudang Wang. First. Sofa. First. One-shot headshot. Horist. First. Hellfire Adeptus reporting. First. Thousands of comments raced to claim first in seconds. Haha, looks like I'm first again. Gaudima's bravery. Damn, how are you so fast? Lord Demon must be a chaos worshipper. No normal person could grab first. Nirvana smoke forms flowers. Where's the Inquisition? Where's the Punishment Center? Ultraman lost in the steel jungle. Damn, already 7.0, and I still haven't gotten an internal test slot. 3 sticks break brotherhood. Please, someone give me an internal test slot. My kid's about to starve. Plasma is not Melta. The Ear Moon base has already been started, and I still didn't get a slot. Big fat caterpillar. When the South Heaven Gate is built, we'll have no hope. The netizens were hyped. Every version brought a handful of internal test slots. With reservations approaching 100 million, chances were tiny, but enthusiasm didn't drop. In-game, players immediately dissected the changes. Ningbren, adventure mode's open. We can pilot ships anywhere. Old Bird, I'm taking a Colossus battleship on a tour. Anyone who dares stop me gets a cannon in the face. What's this weapon upgrade thing? Why haven't I gotten any blessings? Zhongge, if you got a blessing, that'd be huge. Why? Blessings come from the Chaos Gods. You're a Culexus assassin. How would you accept the gods' favor? Wristbro, kill, hack. Don't you think it's weird? Why would the Chaos Gods bless our weapons? Because we're handsome. Adelans, I think the Chaos Gods are trying to corrupt us with this. I think the devs might be setting the stage to invade the warp. How sing? How so? I want to know too. Tell us. The official site's update about the warp didn't call it outright evil or hell. It described the warp as a chaotic realm where good and evil coexist, and it's shaped by will. That implies the devs don't dismiss the warp entirely. They think the warp can be shaped. For a long time, the warp dominated, and the civilizations of the Holy Terra universe couldn't develop ways to constrain it, which let the Chaos Gods grow powerful and made chaos dominant. If our civilizations become strong enough to restrain and harness the warp, they argued, the warp could be guided by lawful order. Then the warp wouldn't be a cancer on the Holy Terra universe. It could help accelerate development, maybe even become harmonious. So, we could invade the warp and establish a human pantheon? You could say that. Can we actually ascend? Stop asking. I'm grinding. I want to ascend. I want to be the strongest in the pantheon. Kill, kill, kill. Hack, hack, hack. The devs have ambitions like Kennedy. At Bald Donkey, this isn't the warp. No need for hellish cold jokes. I'm posting my 7.0 analysis now. The update made waves. Qian Donglai's analysis posts spread fast, and fans swarmed below, worshipping him. For someone who'd reached financial freedom like Qian, reputational clout was one of the few pleasures left. He was about to go online to ride the wave when his smart butler announced a visitor. Qian opened the door to find Old Ma and a few familiar faces, players he'd recruited years ago to help build his imperial finance framework. Rare guest, Old Ma, what brings you here? Qian Donglai ushered them in. Old Ma strode forward, grabbed Qian Donglai in a wrist lock and a neck hold, pinning him to the spot. Old Ma, like Qian, had made his fortune early. He never married, spent his time traveling and studying martial arts. You're incredible. You're awesome. You got the Eagle Medal and even the guide's favor, Old Ma said, voice full of bitter admiration. You brought your brothers into the game. Did you ever think about watching out for us? Do you know what we suffered? We were hung up by traitors and beaten. They humiliated us because our operations weren't good enough. They killed us and desecrated our corpses. You're amazing, a real big shot. Psychic power, killing enemies like little chickens, everyone admires you. Qian Donglai flailed. Ah, no, isn't your name Ma? Why did you switch to Zhao for faith? He tried to talk his way out, but Old Ma tightened his grip. Still mouthing off? Old Ma pressed harder. Qian yelped. I was wrong. I was wrong, big brother. Please let go. Old Ma released him and sat on the sofa. Qian, rubbing his sore neck, offered fruit and tea. What's with you guys today? You come all the way here to accuse me? Qian demanded. Of course we're here to complain, you scoundrel who has no brothers in his eyes. Old Ma said indignantly. You brought us into Hammer 0L. Did you ever think about looking out for us? You always went solo, Qian shot back. You told me you wanted to carve out a world. What happened exactly? We got a mission to clear an Emperor's Children warband, Old Ma said, face dark. Guess who we ran into? Who? Qian asked. Two bad apples from the Warhammer universe, Lucius the Eternal and Fabius Baal. It was a trap. We were ambushed as soon as we arrived and slaughtered. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Old May's expression was wounded pride. Then why didn't you call for help? Qian blinked. You got beaten by those two and you come bother me? You really treat me like a brother. It's embarrassing. They only had 10 people. We had over 30, but we still routed. Old Ma's voice dropped. So, we came to you secretly, hoping you'd help us save face. You come here to beg, and you grab me? Is that your idea of asking for help? Qian glared. That's the kind of swagger you learned from America, putting on the act when you've got nothing. Business makes you like that, Old Ma grinned sheepishly. Good brother, don't take it to heart. Just help me get this back. Qian pulled Old Ma up and made him stand, then sat down himself. This is rebellion, asking for help while sitting and making me stand. I'll help, but not for free. You've got a bottle of 10-year-aged wine, right? Old Ma's eyes widened. That bottle was treasured. If Qian had asked for money, it would hurt less. Asking for the wine felt like asking for his life. If you don't want to, forget it, Qian said, standing to show them out. Okay, I'll have the driver deliver it, Old Ma surrendered. All right, I'll help. Let's go log on and make those two pay. 269. When old enemies meet, jealousy ignites. Shi Long was a man of action. The moment he said he would help Old Ma and the others get their revenge, he was already moving. After logging on, he quickly contacted the senior members of the Emperor Numa battle group and laid out the whole story. Warmaster, Lucius is back? Yes, he cut down my old brother and tortured him to death. I want revenge. Brothers, come help. Dreaming back to the Gobi Desert of the Demon Realm, we were unstoppable back then, bringing a few 50-star pets just to take revenge, chasing them across half a map. Wristbro, kill, chop, chop. Call your friends, let's fight, for the Alliance. For the Horde, kill all Alliance dogs. Juge, one-on-one, don't say I'm bullying you. Enough. At Shi Lang, since you said it, the brothers will help. Gather up, let's go kill those two pests. Wristbro, kill, chop. We can skip the mission. Fabius Baal and Lucius must die. The Emperor Numa battle group moved with brutal efficiency. With the Imperium's partial repairs to a nearby webway conduit, they reached their destination, Planet Andre, in only 3 days. There, Fabius Baal and Lucius, with Chaos Space Marines and packs of beastmen, had already torn down the local defenses. They enslaved Imperial citizens, turning them into experimental subjects and playthings. The fallen Emperor's children, drunk on slaughter, tortured, and killed for amusement, inventing ever more perverse methods to torment the innocent and savoring their screams. Old Ma and the others had answered a distress call from Andre and were ambushed. They were wiped out, humiliated, and tortured. For the members of the Fourth Calamity, that was an enormous disgrace, one that demanded vengeance. Haigui, you clear the traitors' warships. I don't want to hear about any of them escaping. Once the Webway and Stargate projects were stabilized, navigation between strategic regions like Baal and the Calixis sector became far more reliable. Haigui, cruiser exemplar St. Fist at the helm, had piloted the Emperor Numa battle group fleet across half the galaxy to rendezvous with the Warmaster. Don't worry, leave it to me. I guarantee not a single ship gets away, he said. They'll regret trying to flee. It's in your hands. The Warmaster turned to Shi Lang and the others. The rest of you prepare for an airdrop. Purge the surface of traitors and beastmen. We must let the Emperor's light fall on this planet again and show these traitors that punishment has arrived. On planet Andre, Fabius Baal, called Father of Mutation, Manslayer, Gene-Sire, stood amid smoking ruins. His beastmen roared as they tore through rubble searching for hidden Imperial citizens. Now and then, the ruins erupted with desperate cries. Those who didn't surrender were ripped apart as blood sacrifices. A mother's scream cut through the air as her son was torn apart and his organs drawn out. She could only watch, helpless, until she herself was savaged, limbs ripped away, abdomen opened, entrails ground into a bloody mess. Fabius Baal glanced, then looked away. He had no pity for these followers of the Corpse Emperor. They were raw material, sacrifices and slaves for his creations. His new humans were the future. They would supplant the old, become the gods favored, and rule the galaxy. Just one more step, he muttered, his face twisting. His new human experiments were always unstable and needed a stronger anchor. When he learned of the God-chosen, he wanted them for study. But dead, those beings turned to ash, leaving no bones, his experimental subjects dissolving into nothing enraged him. A dozen beastmen lingered 10 meters away, muscles bulging but brains shallow. Even they could tell Fabius Baal was furious and dared not approach. At that moment, Lucius stepped through the beastmen, stretching as he walked toward Fabius Baal. I feel better after cutting those Corpse Emperor fools into pieces, he said. Fabius Baal glared. I'm not in a good mood. You've got flesh and slaves enough to build an army. You're not satisfied. Lucius spread his hands. I wanted the flesh of the God-chosen. You said you could obtain them. Fabius Baal bristled. I did get them for you. It's your fault for not keeping them safe. You can't blame me. You didn't tell me the God-chosen's bodies would turn to dust the moment they died. Fabius Baal snapped. If I'd known, I wouldn't have killed them. Anyway, I delivered them. You lost them, Lucius hissed. He flicked out a long, forked tongue and tasted poison on his blade. By our agreement, you owe me Genicide and Beastman to use as cannon fodder. Fabius Baal shook his head. This transaction failed. You get nothing from me unless you help me capture a few god-chosen alive. Renege, then. Lucius's eyes darkened. The Chaos Space Marines behind him gripped their weapons. The Beastmen, sensing tension directed at their creator, roared and trained firearms and cannons on Lucius and his Marines. Any move, and they would fire. Do you think these crooked melons and cracked dates can deal with me? Lucius sneered. You can try, Lucius, Fabius Baal said. Either help me get god-chosen captives, or we go to war. Nobody benefits from fruitless fighting. Just as the two men were about to erupt into open conflict, the warships in orbit sent a message down. Imperial forces detected. Transports entering atmosphere. Analysis suggests god-chosen forces. The news instantly smoothed tensions. Fabius Baal ordered the Beastmen to lower their weapons and pasted on a cooperative smile. We all came from the same legion. No need to be enemies. As long as you help us capture the god-chosen, I'll give you an extra third of Genicide, he added. Lucius sheathed his weapon and spoke to Fabius as brother. You're right, brother Fabius. Deal. They acted as if their confrontation had never happened. Lucius slipped away with his troops to set traps and fortify positions. Fabius Baal summoned several orc chieftains and other creations. Father, Brutus, a minotaur, bowed respectfully. They had been created by Fabius Baal. To them, he was literally their father. My children, Fabius said, eyes softening with a strange affection. The Corpse Emperor's followers are back. This time, we take them alive. Please, please don't kill them again. Understood, Father. We will bring them back alive, Brutus promised. Players, however, never liked to play by the book. Cool entrances mattered more than obedience. Waiting politely for the transport to land was for the dull-witted. True Fourth Calamity members made an entrance. As the transport ship crossed the Carmen line, they leapt, using their flight systems to descend from 100 kilometers. With propulsion and protective fields engaged, they still struck with terrifying momentum. Boom, boom, boom. Each landing detonated power onto the surface, gouging deep craters and spiderweb cracks across the ground. Beastmen manning anti-air guns, expecting to shoot at ships, froze as these Imperial warriors suddenly stood among the smoke, unharmed and whole. Their limited brains couldn't comprehend it. No aircraft had been scanned, and yet there the Corpse Emperor's people were, on the ground. Reality caught up only when the players opened fire, taking down 7 or 8 burly beastmen in rapid succession. Beastmen were massive, engineered by Fabius Baal, tenacious and lethal in packs. 2 or 3 could suppress a regular Astartes. But before the players in Hellfire Adeptus power armor, enhanced and lethal, those beastmen were like ants. Within 30 seconds of landing, the War Master and his squad had cut down every beastman in sight, leaving broken bodies and shattered flesh. Proceed with the tactical plan. Advance at maximum speed. Leave none alive, the War Master ordered. For the Emperor! For Morgana! Kill! Shi Lang and the others surged forward. They used their power armor and flight to surge into enemy rear positions and unleashed brutal killings. Where enemies were numerous and entrenched, they employed heavy ordnance to level fortifications. Where foes were few and exposed, they closed in and slaughtered them with devastating individual combat prowess. The style that drove Xiaoyang Tuo to despair, never stopping to loot, not counting kills, pushing forward first, dealing with anything afterward, was the Emperor Numa battle group's method. Retake the planet in a day, kill all resistance. So fast, other chapters suspected cheating. Their speed shred the beastmen defensive lines. Blood flowed, screams filled the air. When Lucius and the Emperor's children heard that the God-Chosen had already airdropped and were cutting through line after line, they could hardly believe it. The augurs had only just picked up the transports, yet the God-Chosen were on the ground and already into the slaughter. Lucius abandoned traps and fortifications and led the Chaos Space Marines to reinforce the Beastmen. He ran into the War Master amidst the carnage. A dozen Beastmen had been felled like weeds, no chance to fight back. It's you? Lucius recognized the War Master at once, hatred swelling in his veins. He had sworn to make this man's life worse than death. Now, surrounded by battle, it was the perfect moment to pay that vow. P.S. Another chapter. Thank you, brothers, for your support. 270. White Shark. Sorry, he gave too much. 2 and 1. The War Master finished off the last beastman with a clean stroke and looked up toward Lucius. Who do we have here? Lucius, dealer of hooks for Slaanesh. You can't just hide forever in the Eye of Terror, can you? Come out and discuss the living. Lucius's mouth twitched. What did he mean? Sells hooks for Slaanesh? I am a god chosen of the Prince of Pleasure, the finest swordsman in the galaxy, the living embodiment of slaughter, a walking nightmare. How did he become someone who sells hooks in the mouths of these brutes? Still, he hid the outrage behind a smile. I hope your swordsmanship is as formidable as your tongue. A thin, forked tongue flicked out as Lucius spoke, venom in his voice. This time, you won't be so lucky. The War Master replaced his two-handed sword with a one-handed blade and shield. I'll dismantle your little tricks, cut you to pieces, and make you crawl like a maggot. When I was weaker, I used tricks to win, the War Master said, calm and confident. Now there's no need. No self-destruct device this time. No tricks. Let's settle old scores. This time I'll use my true strength and watch you despair. Big words for someone who talks so much. Lucius raised a poisoned longsword into guard and closed the distance. The two circled, probing, listening for an opening. Lightning flashed in the ruined hall, and the duel erupted. Steel met steel. Lucius's strike was like a phantom, instant, precise. The War Master met it with his shield. Metal rang. He then vertically cleaved with his sword, forcing Lucius back. Lucius answered with a downward chop. The War Master blocked with his shield and countered, driving Lucius back again. Sparks flew. Energy fields flared, shockwaves rippled through the air. Pain throbbed in the web between Lucius's thumb and forefinger. He frowned, surprised. How had this man improved so much? Had the Corpse Emperor blessed him? No sword spirit left, actually relying on blessings to fight? No wonder you grovel for the Corpse Emperor's favor. He's given you a lot, Lucius sneered. The War Master smiled and played along. What? Haven't you received Slaanesh's blessing? You sell hooks and yet expect bones in return? Before Warhammer OL, the War Master had been a keyboard warrior. He knew how to needle an opponent. Lucius's face went red. I didn't sell hooks. If you didn't, why would they pick you? Tawiz would have been 100 times better. The War Master jabbed. Don't say his name in front of me, Lucius snapped, slashing. The War Master blocked every blow. He kept provoking. Tawiz's swordsmanship is nicer than yours. He's better looking, more popular, and I think he outranks you. Lucius's face contorted with rage. Shut up! Ha! The War Master blocked, shoved, and said slowly, I won't. I'll kill you. Lucius launched a furious onslaught, blade a blur. The War Master stood like a wall, shield taking each blow. If you don't want to hear about Tawiz, how about Shalokin? You lost to him, twice. Lucius blinked, then slashed harder. Sparks burst against the War Master's shield. Each strike shook Lucius but could not break through. With a deft shift of the shield's balance, the War Master deflected Lucius's descent, throwing him off just enough to rob him of control. The War Master's other hand darted forward. The one-handed sword found a seam in Lucius's armor and drove through his chest, piercing a heart. Blood, carrying that strange metallic fragrance common to chaos-tainted flesh, spurted. Lucius stared at the blade protruding from his chest. Disbelief and fury mingled on his face. How could he be losing? The first time they'd met, he'd toyed with this man. Now his foe not only matched him, but had wounded him gravely. Had the War Master improved so rapidly? He had lived 10,000 years. How could this be? Kill him, Lucius ordered, and fell back, mortified. His Chaos Space Marines answered with warp fragment projectiles. Whoosh! Several ethereal shards sliced the air and headshotted the 3 Marines at the front. Shichi Lang stepped out, staff in hand. Still thinking of ganging up? Do you take us for dead men? From above, a red-clad figure descended, axe whirling. A Chaos Space Marine looked up and was split from skull to groin by spinning saw blades. Wristbro, the bloodied saw blade's teeth shining, cleaved through the remaining Marines and Beastmen. More players poured into the fray, and the slaughter became a massacre. In minutes, Lucius's followers were wiped out. The War Master looked at Lucius, who now bore a look of choking anger and embarrassed rage. It seems you'll have to face me alone. I'll kill you. Lucius surged forward. The chest wound had stopped bleeding and was knitting, a trait of Chaos Space Marines' gene technology and their god's gifts. He lashed out. The War Master met him with shield. Again, the shield trick. He shoved. Lucius faltered. Too late to back away. The War Master's blade swept across Lucius's throat. A searing pain and blood spurted. Lucius pressed hands to the wound, but it widened under armored fingers, crimson pouring out. His vocal cords were severed, words replaced by blood, but he sneered through the gore. "You interest me more. One day I will kill you." He smiled with feral defiance. The War Master's expression hardened. Of course, those devoted to Slaanesh weren't sane. Forced love at the moment of death. He'd test whether the man could still grin without revival. He rained the heavy shield down on Lucius's head. An ordinary man would have been shattered, but Lucius only bled and staggered. Chaos warriors took punishment like storms. Still, the repeated impacts made him reel. "Fall!" The War Master bellowed and smashed Lucius's skull. The Chaos veteran flew, slammed into and broke a pillar, and fell unconscious. The War Master opened a dimension cube from his spatial inventory. A device darker than the void, Necron tech the Empire had adopted after Trazin's submission to Qin Yun. A beam of light played over Lucius, and the cube unfolded a stasis screen, swallowing him and locking him in a pocket dimension. "I know Slaanesh will revive you, but as long as you're not free, she can't help you," the War Master said coldly. "Stay put. When I borrow the Spear of Dionysus and the Emperor's sword, that will be your end." With that, he put the cube away. The once arrogant son of the Emperor was now a prisoner. The remaining Emperor's sons tried to flee, but Shi Lang and the players hunted them down without mercy. Lucius is dealt with. Fabius Baal is left. "That bastard is full of tricks. Be careful." "Capturing him alive would be best," someone said. "He can revive through means. We should study that." The War Master thought, briefly coveting an Emperor's sword or the Spear of Dionysus. Without real killing artifacts, these heretics would just come back. But such relics were forged by the Emperor, who now remained entombed on the Golden Throne. "I need to find a way to make Huang Laohan work again," he muttered as he led the players onward. Fabius Baal's abominations poured from hidden nooks, beastmen with muscle, blood-streaked teeth, crude weapons, and trophies of bone. "Disgusting things," Shi Lang said, and unleashed raw psychic fury. A warp hand lifted the nearest beastman and tore its body to pieces. Others were smashed into pulp by kinetic strikes and psychic shockwaves. In seconds, they were all cut down. Combat duration, 4.33 seconds. The armor's machine spirit chimed. Threats in range cleared. Shi Lang sifted a dying beastman's mind with psychic probes and extracted Fabius Baal's location. "I found his position," he reported. "We'll go take him now," the War Master replied. They battered through outer defenses, reached the fortress, and blasted the armored door to dust with a shoulder-mounted cannon, new shielding-modified Gauss technology that reduced heavy armor to powder in a single, dazzling blast. Inside the Great Hall, Fabius Baal stood at the far end on a platform. Sparse white hair, a balding pate, and a face of tight wrinkles made him look older than he seemed. Mechanical arms sprouted from his back, bristling with surgical instruments, razors that glinted like a spider's legs. "God chosen," he breathed, eager. "Such perfect design, truly worthy of my creator. Only the Corpse Emperor could achieve this." He had learned from demonic tongues that the God chosen were higher dimensional beings the Corpse Emperor had given bodies to. What Baal wanted was that manufacturing technology. He could fix his children's flaws and birth a new dominant humanity. "Surrender, Fabius Baal. Your cause is lost," the War Master said. "Surrender?" Fabius Baal laughed. "You expect me to surrender to you? Why should we forgive you?" the War Master asked. "Your crimes are beyond what death would atone." Fabius Baal bristled. The War Master's words were unpleasant. "Seems the Corpse Emperor gave you more. Such sharp tongue. The old Space Marines couldn't speak like that." "Enough," the War Master said. "You're not worthy of pity." Baal clapped his hands, and monstrous abominations surged forward. The vanguard was a minotaur-like brute, Brutus, hulking, bull-headed, taller than a Primaris, and clad in crude heavy armor, swinging an axe the size of a drop-pod door. "Let me, Brutus, be your opponent, God chosen," it snorted. Brutus charged, and the War Master switched to a two-handed sword, his Hell Pioneer armor in strength mode. Steel met axe with an ear-splitting clash. Neither gave ground. Then the War Master's absorbed toughness shard kicked in and power poured from him. Brutus faltered, his strength ebbed. The War Master slowly forced the axe back, then shoved, then plunged his sword through Brutus's chest. The Minotaur staggered, screamed, and was beheaded. Fabius Baal watched his creation die in a heartbeat, his gamble collapsing. Screams echoed as beastmen and abominations were cut down by Shi Lang and the others. Baal's heart dropped. He had lost. The War Master activated flight and dropped before the platform. Shi Lang and the other players leapt up, closing the net. "Let's end this," someone shouted. They descended on Fabius Baal. Players rained punches and kicks, pinned him to the ground, and hauled him up. Old Ma arrived with reinforcements and took vindictive pleasure in slapping the kneeling mad scientist. Baal recognized some, survivors from his previous traps. He remembered demon voices saying the God-chosen resurrected endlessly. That excited him. If he understood how, his creations could be perfected. "Did I tell you to laugh?" Old Ma demanded, then thwacked Baal. Teeth flew. Baal spat blood and, between curses, tried to smile at the God-chosen's torment. "We've got you recorded," he muttered. Old Ma smacked him again. "How should we deal with him?" Shi Lang asked. "I say tie him up and put him into a stasis field," Ningba Ren suggested, grinning. "Guan Bao sent me some rope bondage vids recently. Might be useful." "Rope bondage films?" The War Master blanched. Guan Bao and Pianjie, dubbed the twin heroes of Slaanesh, had questionable taste. "Killing him now would be mercy. Your method would make him beg for death." Ningba Ren won the vote. Fabius Baal was lashed to an iron frame in a posture that would make Slaanesh proud, humiliatingly indecent, and placed in a stasis field. The War Master pretended to avert his eyes. "I can't even look." "Heretic," Shi Lang mock-scolded Ningba Ren. "You're a heretic." "Fabius Baal won't be showing his face in the Eye of Terror for a long time," Zhuge said. Baal writhed and hissed. He'd rather be ground into mince. He imagined 10,000 years of this public humiliation. Only Abaddon prancing on stage in a camisole could compare. "Let's make it worse," Ningba Ren added. "Put Lucius in there next in a sexy camisole and stockings, holding a whip." The War Master snapped his hand in front of his face. "Don't even joke about it. I have goosebumps just imagining it." Ningba Ren's grin widened. Unknown to him, in Slaanesh's domain, a chaos god smiled on the suggestion. Pleasure in tormenting others granted Ningba Ren a buff, reduced damage from ranged attacks and psychic powers. For anyone who reveled in perversion and pain, Slaanesh gave a nod. Meanwhile, after Qin Yun pushed the 7.0 update, he kept leading his fleet against Xenos and heretics. Having cleared a planet of chaos, he received a communication from Guilliman asking for a favor. "Saint, I may need you to come to Nocturne." "Why?" Qin Yun asked. Guilliman's tone grew awkward as he explained ancient politics. After the Horus Heresy, the Astartes Codex reforms, Vulcan's and Lemon Russ's resistance, Dorn's yield, Vulcan's unease with the Imperium's direction. Guilliman worried that the Salamanders wouldn't accept Primaris Marines or agree to reforms. He asked Qin Yun, the Saint, to go and smooth things over. Nocturne's tie to the Webway and its status as a founding chapter's home made it strategically important. "All right, I'll go," Qin Yun agreed. Guilliman beamed. "I knew you were the best. With you, humanity's revival is inevitable." Qin Yun smirked. "Our regent flattery knows no bounds." "From the heart," Guilliman insisted. After wrapping up matters on the liberated world, Qin Yun set course for Nocturne. En route, his fleet detected other warp signatures and dropped out of the warp to assist a system in distress. Shieling reported multiple other fleets entering Holy Terra. Preliminary identification: Imperial fleets. They were old designs, ancient light cruisers arrayed around a capital ship. Qin Yun queried identity. They replied, "The Carcharodons." Qin Yun raised an eyebrow. The shark-obsessed chapter of exile veterans? They weren't exactly known for loyalty, but they were useful. The Carcharodons had more ships than his small fleet, and together they overwhelmed the Chaos remnants, turning them to burning wreckage. Shieling then relayed a request. The Carcharodons wanted half the spoils and the right to deal with the Imperial planet. Qin Yun clenched his jaw. He could see through their intentions. They'd come to collect taxes, blood tithes and ash tithes. He refused private taxation, offered a portion of supplies instead, and the Carcharodons asked to meet. On board the battle barge Nikor, Chapter Master Tyberos and his captains mulled the invitation. They agreed to a meeting, Librarian Tekaharangi said. Could be a trap, Captain Arito warned. The chief librarian shook his head. No sensing of malice, only a sacred aura. Tyberos decided to send the first company with him. If it was a trap, they'd purge the heresy in the Corpse Emperor's name. If not, they'd negotiate taxes and secure supplies for their chapter's future. They boarded shuttles and approached Qin Yun's hangar expecting posturing, weapons drawn, only to find a mountain of supplies stacked in plain sight. New equipment, weapons, and Primaris tech. Tyberos paled. Are all these for us? Qin Yun smiled. They're for the chapters. The Imperium forbids private taxation. We'll also send an Adeptus Mechanicus team for Primaris upgrades. Tyberos, who had come planning threats and demands, now only wanted to kiss the ground. With so much gear, send us missions. We'll earn it. Qin Yun laughed. Stop collecting blood tithes. Help the Imperium fight. The Carcharodons accepted, and the supplies were loaded. For chapters like theirs, such aid meant survival, and perhaps a chance to regain honor in a changed galaxy. P.S. 10,000 words updated. I want to try for the Essence Badge. Otherwise, when there are more chapters, there will be even less hope. Do I only have to stop taking blood tithes and ash tithes? Is it really that simple? Terebos felt oddly unsettled. This wasn't even a concession, more like a permission slip. The Carcharodons had always been a chapter of exiles and veterans. For years, their Primarch was unclear, with no parent chapter to champion them and little favor among the High Lords or the Tech Priests. They had learned to fend for themselves. That's how blood tithes and ash tithes came about. Blood tithes let them take potential recruits or chapter serfs from Imperial worlds. Ash tithes let them trade relics and Xenos artifacts for equipment from the Mechanicum. During the Badab War, when Huron's rebellion reshaped allegiances, the High Lords had taken a Mantis Warriors world and handed it over to the Carcharodons. They didn't settle it, they emptied it, packed up its people and resources, and left. The Carcharodons' calling was to patrol beyond Imperial space and strike enemies the Imperium couldn't manage. They could not run a homeworld. Harvest and leave was the best strategy. Those tithes were their lifeline. Now, though, there was a rich man on the field shouting, "I'll pay for everything." Who would bother with tithes? Wouldn't it be better to ride his coattails? Yes, stop collecting ash tithes and blood tithes. All these supplies are for your replenishment. Qin Yun's smile was casual. Now, Chapter Master Terebos, arrange to move the equipment off my ship. Or, he added with mock severity, if it stays too long, I'll have to charge storage fees. The joke loosened Terebos' tension and confirmed what he suspected. This was genuine compensation. Terebos wore heavy, tactical dreadnought Terminator armor, gray ceramite studded with brass rivets, plasteel and adamantium reinforcing the bulk. Massive gauntlets, power claws, twin chain blades curled from his arms. When he removed his helmet, the face beneath was weathered and scarred, hard as stone. He tucked the helmet under his arm, knelt on one knee. The yellowed skull dangling from his belt clattered softly. The Carcharodon's chapter is honored to serve you, esteemed Imperial Saint, he said with solemn pride. From this day, our blade will follow your will. Don't make it a ceremony. Qin Yun raised both hands, and with a quiet motion, lifted the heavy-clad Terebos as if by invisible hands. They were poor men. Even a small boon held the power to change them. Children who've never known kindness tend to cling to any who show it. The Carcharodons proved that truth many times over. Qin Yun thought of his players but dismissed them. These were not the rebellious sort. You are a hero, Terebos, Qin Yun said. And the Carcharodons are heroes too. You've given everything for the Imperium. This is what you deserve. The saint's presence, shining and calm, struck Terebos like a mythic angel. To have a saint acknowledge the chapter, when so many chapters treated them with suspicion and the High Lords habitually ignored them, filled him with a pride he'd rarely felt. Thank you, Saint, he managed. Contact your chapter and have the supplies moved, Qin Yun added. We'll discuss other matters when you're done. Understood. Terebos relayed the order to the battle barge Nikor, had the chief librarian dispatch teams to move the items. On the comms, one of the chapter's voices, low and wary, spoke up. Great Raider, be careful. You're in negotiations. If you show too much goodwill, we may lose bargaining power. Tekahurangi, enough, Terebos snapped. Stop questioning our saint. I suspect he's our chapter's progenitor primarch. What? The chief librarian's voice went still. Terebos, normally as serious as a ledger, was suddenly giddy, singing praises and claiming the saint might be their primarch. They'd only recently learned they were a successor of the Raven Guard. To change banners now and claim a new primarch was absurd. That idea needs correction by the chaplain, Tekahurangi muttered to himself. Terebos' sudden conversion was baffling. After ending the call, Tekahurangi boarded a shuttle and went to meet Terebos. When the shuttle landed and Tekahurangi stepped out, he and the accompanying chaplains and captains saw the mountain of supplies arranged in the hangar. Their mouths went dry. You said all this is for us? Yes, this is only a portion, Terebos replied, smiling. There's more delayed cargo that hasn't been offloaded. Tekahurangi bowed deeply. We must apologize for doubting you, Great Raider. There's a reason you lead our chapter. Now I suspect our earlier investigations were wrong. Our parent chapter isn't the Raven Guard. Nicodemus, a chaplain, agreed, echoing the sentiment. They had received far too much for a mere favor. The saint also promised ongoing imperial support, supplies, new equipment, and future refits. A primarch who'd exiled their forebears, a parent chapter that neglected them, and now a handsome, attentive saint offering such aid. Why hesitate? Better to latch on to a powerful ally and save themselves years of hardship. The players, watching from a distance, saw the little sharks happily moving cargo and egged each other on in the comm channel. So this is the poor chapter that raises sharks. They look kind of comical. Warmaster, I heard the Carcharodons stash a lot of relics. Are we going to fleece them? Domo, no more talk. I'm teleporting over. They look like bandits in a village. Move their sharks. Juge, why are you so wicked? Terebos noticed the players in their odd armors and asked Qin Yun, curious. Saint, are those your men? Qin Yun glanced and smiled. They are the God-chosen, protected by the Emperor's might, a gift from the Emperor to humanity. God-chosen? Gift? Terebos echoed. What can they do? Everything you can do, and more. Whatever you can't do, they can. They are the bane of daemons, things the Chaos gods fear. Under the Emperor's protection, they do not truly die. They can be reborn repeatedly and grow beyond imagination. If you need them, you can issue missions. I've already given you the permissions. Hearing that, Terebos and the little sharks behind him were stunned. Protected by the Emperor, infinite resurrection, invincible, practically. Terebos hesitated. Such power must come at a cost. Qin Yun read him and grinned. They're easy to work with. For example, you can have them help move supplies for a small reward. Qin Yun quickly put together a transport mission. The players swarmed in with unrivaled enthusiasm. Their dimensional space made hauling efficiency far beyond mortal couriers, and soon they'd moved everything at breakneck speed. Just a small reward and they're so glad? Terebos asked, baffled. They have to earn their gear to serve the Emperor, Qin Yun explained. The God-chosen have no imperial logistics. They fund their own supplies. The assembled salamanders, chaplains, and captains stared as if the Emperor had grown a second head. Earn money to buy equipment to serve the Emperor? Loyalty had become a marketplace. They'd always felt pitiful relying on tithes to keep their chapter functioning. Here were God-chosen, blessed by the Emperor, who gamed for credits and kit. If this was loyalty, the Carcharodons felt like flat earthers. After the supplies were moved, Qin Yun held a banquet to celebrate. The Carcharodons had never seen such welcome after a frontier campaign. Afterwards, Qin Yun mentioned his destination, Nocturne. We'll come too, Terebos said. They'd latched on to a powerful patron. They weren't about to let him go alone. Qin Yun considered, then nodded. Very well. Come with us. The Carcharodons' visit was only a short interlude. The fleet resumed course for Nocturne. During the trip, the players plotted how to obtain the Carcharodons' holy relics. Relics in NPC hands were wasted. In players' hands, they could be fused with gear to add attributes and become far more valuable. Terebos, watching the players' greedy looks, felt uneasy. There was hunger in those eyes that made him wary. After hesitating, he told Qin Yun his misgiving. Qin Yun laughed. They're not interested in you. They want the relics. Qin Yun suggested gladiatorial missions. Defeat a company captain and earn a relic piece. Restrict the number per day and charge a fee. Tiboris, whoever was running the arena, was skeptical but tried it. The result was immediate. Players swarmed, lining up in waves. There were no limits or fees at first, and the Carcharodons learned quickly what a true Roll King did. As long as they weren't carted to the medbay, they kept challenging. By sunset, Tiboris peeled off his power armor, legs shaking from exertion and stimulants. "I should have listened to the saint. These god-chosen will play me to death if I'm not careful," he muttered. Meanwhile, on Atoma in the Calixis sector, the 13th wave of players came online. 500,000 this time. The whole church district cleared out to welcome them. When the internal testers appeared in a flash on the great church square, the place erupted. "Is this fully realistic? This is incredible. The air, the textures, just like the real thing." New players gaped. Warhammer 0L had become wildly popular. They'd waited long hours for a slot. Now that they were in, they poured into every corner. One newbie, ID, Labor is Most Glorious, performed a crude prank, only to be struck down by a sudden psychic bolt, collapsed with tongue out, while whips of lightning continued to pummel the corpse. Others who tried the same stunt turned pale. "Anyone want to go on an adventure with me? Let's hunt the universe's greatest treasure," a player cried, climbing a statue. Around them, every chapter set up recruitment displays. The agriculture battle group had a barbecue cart, one griller made of mushrooms, another manning the vegetables, hilarity and chaos as produce cooked and brawls broke out between mushroom folk and vegetable folk. The crowd stared, baffled and amused. "The founder of that chapter must be a PMod player," somebody snorted. "They need target practice with a last spear." Elsewhere, the MC Dynasty put on a rap, dance, and basketball idol show, Gene Steelers in overalls singing recruitment rap with slick choreography. The G's idol had no hair, but the little players still swooned. The Demon Hunter group had a club vibe, with chained succubi dancing in cages, their borrowed human shapes and seductive forms drawing a crowd. Offers floated across the square. Succubi, tyrannid maids for the MC Dynasty, limited edition masks, demonstrations of Alpha and Hydra tactics, magic guild calls. Old players tried every gimmick to entice recruits. The scene was as noisy as a bazaar. Feng, Casca the Sage, and other sector lords were exhausted maintaining order. The God-Chosen were energetic and dangerous if unmonitored. In the warp, Kairos the Fate Weaver watched the God-Chosen's movements with growing concern. As the power of the Cursed rose, peering into the Yatoma world grew harder, but Kairos persisted. It was the only way to track those player phantoms. Watching their antics, Kairos shook his head. "These high-dimensional beings are devils. Who cans greenskins and sells them as food? Who keeps daemons as stage props? They're filming, role-playing, making mockeries of sacred things." He saw blasphemous vignettes the mortals played, stories that made him feel his mind fray. Worse, the outsiders were building titanic ships and celestial fortresses, setups capable of pulverizing planets and changing the balance of the galaxy. They had little respect for chaos, and even less for other races. If they continued to grow unchecked, the galaxy would head toward ruin. "Protecting the galaxy is our duty," Kairos muttered. "We cannot let these outsiders turn everything to nothing." He began to consider a plan to slow their growth. If something could be put forward as a champion, perhaps it could hold them back. Who could be chosen? He wondered. Perhaps the Titans, push them, and they might compete with the Imperium itself. After a week's travel, Qin Yun's fleet reached Nocturne's system. They entered from the Mandeville Point, then burned in under conventional engines. Augur arrays flagged their approach. Nocturne's defenders closed fast to verify identity. Nocturne still relied on archaic astropathic comms and had intercepted fragments of messages from the warp. Those messages mentioned two great figures rallying the Indomitus Crusade, Robert Gilliman and a saint none of them had heard of. Beyond that, astropathy revealed little. On Nocturne, the Salamander's chapter master Tushan convened his senior officers when word arrived of an Imperial fleet. "Who are they?" he asked the communications officer. "Part of the fleet is space sharks. The other claims to be led by a saint," the officer reported, projecting the compiled astropathic fragments. Tushan frowned. He knew the space sharks, brutal, remorseless, willing to sacrifice civilians or steal supplies to accomplish their goals. Their methods clashed with Salamander honor. Contact between the chapters had been minimal at best. Now they arrived, accompanied by a saint. Something was amiss. "They come with the saint," said Paris, second company captain. "From what we've heard, Guilliman and this saint have combined efforts to reform Terra and fight the Great Raider. Whether friend or foe, they're Imperial forces," Tushan said. "We must be cautious but hospitable. Let them present themselves." The fleet was allowed into orbit. Only Qin Yun's battleship was permitted to dock. The rest remained outside. Tiberius complained, "They're suspicious of you, Saint." Qin Yun shrugged. "If it eases their minds, we'll follow the procedure." Qin Yun, Tiberius, and the players disembarked to the waiting salamanders. At their head stood Tushan in heavy Terminator armor. When Tushan looked up at Qin Yun and recognized the face, his eyes widened. He spoke a name, half in wonder. "Sanguinius?" "I am not sanguinius," Qin Yun replied gently. "I'm only a man who has received the Emperor's blessing." The humility won Tushan and the salamander's favor. Tushan came straight to the point. "Saint, why are you here?" Qin Yun explained. Guilliman had tasked him with promoting Primaris enhancements and technological reforms. "We do not trust Guilliman," Tushan said bluntly. "He split the legions and left the High Lords to bungle the Imperium." Qin Yun kept calm. "Guilliman has been gone for 10,000 years. The Imperium's current state isn't all his fault. The Great Raider shattered Cadia. The galaxy is torn. Chaos grows stronger. Without new tech and new warriors, humanity cannot meet this crisis." Tushan considered the Primaris Marines that waited behind Qin Yun. Taller, better equipped. They offered replenishment and increased combat power, but the salamanders feared losing their way or becoming Guilliman's tool. Brayarth, an ancient warrior entombed in a dreadnought, stepped forward. "Let Nocturne make the choice," Brayarth suggested. "We'll accept Primaris technology if you can prove yourself by our trials." "What trials?" Qin Yun asked. "3, Brayarth said. "Cross the lava river barehanded, slay a volcanic beast alone, forge a weapon in the death volcano." These were the salamander's rites, tests of heat resistance, strength, and the metallurgical craft of Vulcan. Qin Yun agreed. "You're too easygoing, Saint," Tiberius muttered. "He would have solved it with force." Qin Yun didn't respond. If he fought a chapter of Vulcan's sons, and then Vulcan returned, the consequences would be terrible. It was wiser to win their trust. The first trial, crossing the lava river, was done using plunge stones set in streams of molten rock. Ordinary men could not touch them for a moment. The salamander's gene seed and heritage let them survive and stride across. Qin Yun, protected by the Emperor's blessing and a fireproof robe, easily crossed to the other side. Next, he climbed into the death volcano for the second trial, slaying a volcanic beast. Nocturne's deaths, fire dragons, roamed those tunnels. Deep within the mountain, Qin Yun found a monstrous fire dragon, wings spanning 30 meters, a flame sack that spewed white-hot breath, scales like tempered steel that shrugged off bolter rounds. They fought. The contest was fierce, but Qin Yun's strength won out. He severed the beast's head. Sulfurous, superheated blood flooded the cavern. He took its teeth and bones to forge a weapon in the volcano's heart. Qin Yun had the knowledge curse. His passive meant he learned quickly. With Tushan's guidance, he grasped forging skills faster than any novice should. Though no master, he reached a competent standard. Days of hammering and shaping produced a spear formed from dragon tooth and bone. As the weapon took shape, the death volcano shuddered. The dormant mountain roared to life, an eruption that made the very heavens tremble. "Dragon's roar!" Tushan cried, eyes wide. The ancient texts said the death volcano embodied Nocturne's soul. Such an upheaval had only occurred when the Emperor walked the world or when Vulcan was reborn. The forge cavern collapsed, rubble rained down. A chunk struck Tushan's head and knocked him out. Qin Yun had no choice. One hand held the newly forged dragon-tooth spear. The other cradled the unconscious chapter master. He sprinted from the collapsing cavern as lava fountains and choking ash filled the sky. Even the salamanders fell back to preserve their lives. "Will he be all right? This isn't something a living person can endure," the younger players fretted. "If he dies, he'll just resurrect," someone said. "He's not an original NPC, we've seen it happen." As they watched the ash-choked sky, Qin Yun emerged through smoke, the spear in one hand and Tushan limp in the other. A roar rose from the gathered crowd. The fathers of the forge inspected the spear when Qin Yun handed it over. Its quality was astonishing, better than most of the weapons they produced, nearly on par with the artifacts born of Vulcan himself. For a first attempt, it was almost uncanny. If Qin Yun forged more, the salamanders murmured, he might rival the greatest smiths. "Have I completed the 3 trials?" Qin Yun asked Brearth. "Yes, Saint." Brearth nodded, and with many salamander warriors knelt. "The salamanders will follow your command." "Rise. No need for such formality," Qin Yun said, relieved. Earning the salamanders' trust was worth the ordeal. When Tushan awoke, he thanked Qin Yun for saving his life and declared he would accept the reforms. He ordered the tech priests to build a lighthouse for the Primaris enhancement process for his chapter. For the players, simpler tasks were issued: catch dragons, keep busy, while the tech priests began work. Qin Yun had shielding open comms to Guilliman, and by chance Lion also came online. He told the 2 Primarchs how he'd won the salamanders. The Lion laughed at Guilliman's expense. "My brother, you're truly unpopular. Even Vulcan's sons don't trust you." Guilliman scowled. "This regency is impossible. Everyone slanders us. I want to go back to Macragge and do nothing." Qin Yun then looked to Lion. "Don't tell me you logged on just to mock your brother." Lion's grin faded. "No, I came because I found the Midnight Empire, the one those bat brats set up. They've been massacring worlds, forcing submission and building an empire spanning hundreds of systems. I've also uncovered a surprising detail. It appears the bastard father of those bat brats is in their midst." Qin Yun considered that new threat in silence. The galaxy kept getting stranger and more dangerous. Lionel Johnson's words froze both Guilliman and Qin Yun. "Conrad Kurz? Wasn't that madman dead?" After the storm of ruin on Divine, a broken Conrad Kurz had begged Sanguinius to bring him before the Emperor. He wanted forgiveness and to be welcomed back into the Imperium, but Sanguinius only sneered, telling the Midnight Ghost he would never be redeemed, that he would live forever in guilt. In the end, Sanguinius sealed Kurzi in a stasis coffin and cast him into the void to accept the damnation he had always believed inevitable. At the end of the heresy, a merchant vessel called the Sheldon found that stasis coffin. The crew thought they'd struck fortune. Instead, they released Conrad Kurz. He slaughtered almost everyone aboard. One psychic crewman survived, not by luck, but because Kurze kept him alive and turned him into a pilot. Among the dead was an assassin who, before dying, transmitted Kurze's coordinates to the Officio Assassinorum. The Sheldon had no warp drive. It took years to travel between systems on conventional engines, with Kurz keeping the terrified mortal by his side the whole time, alternately mutilating him in fits of cruelty and training him to fly the ship. When they reached Lorgar, Kurz summoned his sons to witness his death. Midnight Lords across the galaxy flocked to the world. There, the assassin sent by the Officio easily killed the Primarch. Kurze did not resist. He had long believed in atonement through death. He thought his crimes demanded it, and even ordered his legion not to retaliate. The Midnight Lords, however, had no love left for him. They tore the assassin apart before he could flee far. "Conrad Kurz, has this scourge come back?" Guilliman paced, the hatred of old campaigns etched in his face. During the Great Crusade, Kurz had been monstrous, using torture and slaughter to spread terror until worlds submitted. He had gone mad and destroyed his homeworld, then descended further, leaving once-rich planets as ruins littered with corpses. He had colluded with Horus, helped plan the drop site massacre, tormented Vulcan, butchered thousands, and brought ruin to Macragge itself. Guilliman's mind darkened at the memory of his lost son, Augustus, and the attempt on his foster mother's life. "Maybe he was never truly dead," Lionel Johnson said quietly. "The Primarch's vitality is beyond imagining. Some of our brothers seem to come back from worse, or perhaps that assassin never actually killed him, or this could be a traitor's ruse. Even if it's lies, we must treat it as real," Qin Yun warned. He looked to Lionel Johnson. "You should have your gear upgraded." Lion glanced at his armor, a modified newer model, his weapon freshly forged, the shield his father once left in his hand. "This setup is adequate," he said. "You don't know what kind of changes 10,000 years has wrought in Kurz," Qin Yun said, firm. "I'll craft new equipment for you. The god chosen will deliver it." Lion did not refuse. Age had taught him to accept counsel, and survival requires prudence. Guilliman added, "Ernest, be careful. If things go wrong, find me. Finding me will be slow, but if you can reach the saint. Lion rolled his eyes. Gilliman, that's why people don't like you. You sound as if I can't handle curs, Gilliman said. That's not what I said, Gilliman protested. Don't forget Macraj. Curs's threat is real. I'm worried about you. If you hadn't, Lion snapped. If you want to bring up old grudges? How did Curs get to Macraj? Lion's question hung in the air, and Gilliman lost the temper he'd been holding back. You're saying Curs hid on your ship. That's different, Lion began. You failed to catch him. You didn't warn me. Macraj paid the price. My sons died. The defense almost failed. These are different things. Lion's patience showed cracks. I cornered him on my ship. You cornered him and let him escape. On Macraj, you had no excuse. You couldn't catch him on a Gloriana-class battleship, but you're saying you'd catch him in a city. Don't be absurd. Gilliman's eyes flashed. Is my strength in question, rowboat? Yes. If you can't do it, don't fault others. Fine, we'll settle it. Each of us leads a team. We'll see who takes Curze down. Qin Yun listened to the bickering with a rueful expression. Primarchs, it seemed, were no different from anyone else when old wounds were picked at. He cut in. Enough. The important thing is Curze. He's cunning and dangerous. Prepare, upgrade, and stop squabbling. Both Primarchs huffed, but the conversation broke up. Lion turned and ended the transmission. Gilliman did likewise. Alone in the silent comms room, Qin Yun understood why the Emperor had been maddened by his sons. 18 prodigious, willful beings who would not and could not take orders from one another. He exhaled loudly, then shrugged himself back to work. Weapons for Lionel Johnson, a new suit of power armor laced with the best tech and fragments of authority to give it an edge. The transport barge shuddered under the strain. Void shield crackled, and alarms screamed before cutting out. The ship had broken through the final defensive ring and plunged into the planet's gravity well. A dozen transports spilled out from the carrier and fell toward the surface like iron meteors. Inside one of those transports, players laughed and boasted. I was top of my class at the Air Force Academy, been doing drop training my whole life, the player with the ID Silent Night Sky crowed. Watch and learn. Is Warhammer OL really a training tool at schools now? Another marveled, imagining the developer's fortune. Director Chi, escorting a pack of players as part of a simulated insertion for military academies, had other plans. Come here, he told Silent Night Sky. Stand at the hatch. What are you doing? The younger player asked. You learned aerial insertions in school. This is Warhammer OL's standard insertion. Before anyone could react, Director Chi gave Silent Night Sky a shove, and the player tumbled into freefall, howling as the landscape rushed up. The rest followed, some protesting, most pushed. Thrusters and winged power armor fired, and for a few harrowing minutes, the sky was full of hurtling figures. Ground defenses opened up a scatter of rounds, but most shots missed the tiny, fast targets. A few unlucky players were shredded in midair. Most reached the citadel intact and exploded into fighting. Silent Night Sky landed atop a massive citadel and opened fire, bolters spitting flame as mortals serving the Midnight Lords scattered. His squad mates hit the ground, formed up, and fought as a unit. Their weapons were modified, their loadouts far stronger than the antiquated defenses could handle. The players advanced with a reckless bravery that came from being able to log out if they died. 3 Midnight Lords answered the incursion. Their demon-faced helms and spiked armor flashed under the gunfire as the players cheered and taunted. They shattered the defenders' ranks. The ground forces fell back. The citadel's positions collapsed. 7 or 8 Midnight Lords were soon cornered in a fortress. Director Qi and his crew tried to take them alive. Lay down your weapons, they shouted. Surrender and live. The defenders ignored them. Director Qi grinned and barked to a nearby player, Esperanto. Bring the melt-a-gun. That's anti-aircraft. Court-martial. Esperanto protested. Only the losers get court-martialed. Director Qi shoved him toward the behemoth weapon. The melt-a-gun was enormous, its barrel enough to turn a tower into dust. The crew struggled it into position, charged the battery, locked the target, and prepared to fire. Then a black figure descended and landed squarely on the barrel. A slice of the barrel vanished. The melt-a-gun detonated catastrophically, sending a blinding mushroom cloud of fire and light across the courtyard. Players screamed and were torn apart, logs filled with casualties. Director Qi's stored Xenos units were shredded as he grabbed for cover, buying him a breath to look up at the attacker. The figure was tall, almost as vast as Lionel Johnson or Gilliman. Pale face, long hair draped over shoulders, eyes like pits of black. He was unmistakable. The surviving players, mid-hope and mid-hubris, went silent. "Conrad Kurze," Director Qi whispered. "Conrad Kurze? How are you alive?" The Primarch halted and fixed his gaze on the god chosen standing among the players. "So my father has new warriors? And you recognize me?" Kurze's arrival stunned the battlefield into an uneasy hush. Midnight Lords clambered out of the shattered fortress and gathered around their lord, but their faces showed fear and reluctance. Their loyalty was more of a leash than love. Then someone, foolishly brave, charged. "Conrad Kurze, I'll fight you!" Silent Night Sky screamed, driving a chainsword up. He didn't make it 3 strides. Kurze's movement was an instant, clinical killing. The player shattered mid-leap, body exploding into fragments. A white scars-identified player, Jijin Iron Mantu, surged forward with a guandao, vowing vengeance, and was obliterated in the same instant. Director Qi shouted for a mass charge. Hundreds of players surged in together, a swarm of weapons and bravado. They were knocked aside like dust. The killing was terrifyingly efficient. Director Qi lasted longest. 5 blows sent him flying. He felt a brutal pain in his abdomen. Kurze loomed over him to finish the Gauleiter off, claws poised. A sword slammed into Kurze's forearm with the ringing report of metal on metal. Lionel Johnson strode from the smoke, shield and blade in hand, a towering figure in a flowing cloak. "Conrad Kurze," he said, voice like crushed iron. "Come and finish this." Kurze laughed, the sound hollow. "Long time, brother. You look old." "And you look like entropy," Lion said. "You are not fit to speak of our father." "You were his favored son," Kurze jeered. "We were his instruments. Why would you begrudge me my methods?" Lion's sword flashed. The 2 Primarchs collided, and the battlefield became a war of gods. Shockwaves ripped through stone, towers quivered, blade met claw in violent, ancient rhythm. "You destroyed everything he strove for," Lion said through the clash. "I am also his son," Conrad snarled. "Why can't I invoke him? He created monsters and walked away. He crowned Horus. He tormented Angron. He conquered with a will that could not restrain the tools he made. I corrected what he could not." "You're mad," Lion snarled. "Fear cannot hold an empire together. It only breeds ruin." Kurze grinned as he vaulted to a higher perch and pointed down at the corpses of 5 people hung from a tower. "Look," he said, voice cold as ice. "This one was 8 years old. You pity him. Call me monstrous, but his mother was a senator and his father a corporation magnate. He bullied and crippled classmates, killed nannies, terrorized those below his rank. The law could not touch him. The poor were punished for speaking out. I gave their victims a choice. If they dropped charges, the family would be spared. They knelt, begged for mercy. They begged the people they'd hurt to forgive them. The victims demanded justice. They asked me to judge. I gave them what they asked. Every man I killed was guilty, but those you killed in your coming here were innocent." Lion activated his armor's flight systems and leapt, slashing. Their battle tore the tower apart. Dust and rubble rained down. Kurze's voice never faltered. "I built an empire of order from a ruined world. I dragged out criminals and punished them. The planets I remade prospered, better than what our father built. Did he ever repent? Did he ever accept responsibility?" "You're insane," Lion spat. "This is not justice." Their clashing was a dance of eons. For a moment, Kurze managed to melt into a black mist and flood the battlefield with a darkness that quivered like living fear. Lion stepped into the shadow, and for the first time, Kurze paused. The hunter had become the hunted. From within the mist, a fortress of pale light answered. A shield, the old Emperor's shield, or something like it, materialized and slammed into Kurze. The black cloud collapsed, Kurze's armor dented, and he screamed that single word of disbelief. Lionel Johnson had changed. He was no simple swordsman of old glory. He had learned other stranger arts, and they matched Kurze's. Kurze realized he could not win this night. He had assumed terror was his domain. He had thought himself reborn as fear incarnate. Against Lion's new edge, he would bleed. He chose to slip away and pick a place for the final reckoning. "I'll wait for you on Lorgar. We'll end this there, once and for all," Kurze intoned, and then the midnight lords around him were swallowed by darkness, and he was gone. Lion lunged, enraged and calling names, but the Primarch had vanished. The traitorous governors and hangers-on in the Gaedan system who'd sided with Curze were hunted down within hours. Imperial banners rose again over the suffering world. Lion ordered a purge of those responsible for the collapse, the old powerful families who had been complicit. He also kept capable administrators who proved loyal in the aftermath. A black cat, a white cat, he said. If they computed and ruled well, he would keep them. Aboard a starship caught in the warp, Conrad Kurz stood before the 10th prophet Talus. "Father," Talus said cautiously, noting Kurz's injuries, "are you well? You look harmed." Kurz's claws raked across Talus's faceplate, drawing a red streak before stopping at the Midnight Lord's throat. "Are you questioning me?" he asked. Talus and the rest knelt, trembling. Fear was currency within Kurz's legion. He had once slaughtered a 10th of his sons to enforce his will. "We never meant," they prayed. "All of you leave," Kurz said, and they hurried out, relieved to escape. When the door closed, Kurz sagged. He was exhausted. He could not show weakness before his sons. A few truly supported him, but most obeyed from terror. In the last days of the Great Crusade, he had seen the rot set into his own legion. Recruits who were nothing but scum had turned a hard, mean tactic into wanton slaughter. He had weighed purging his own ranks and found only a handful innocent enough to justify survival. He had given up. After a moment's rest, Kurz arose. He had fought Lion and seen that the old hunter had weapons of his own now. He had to adapt. Lorgar would be the stage for the final verdict. He felt the feral certainty of a man who had always believed himself justice incarnate. Lion had won this clash. That did not mean the war was over. "My brother," he muttered, "last time you beat me, but next time, victory will be mine." Author's note, same as usual, 10,000 words. If you enjoy it, please support the work. I'll pick readers with positive comments to appear in the story. Player names are currently chosen from the comments section, too many to invent myself. Thanks for the monthly tickets. They're powerful. Conrad Kurz is a coward. Even after 10,000 years, that hadn't changed. Ryan returned to the rock fortress in a foul mood. Halfway through the fight, that bastard Conrad Kurz had actually run away. He was all bluster and threats, but when it came to standing his ground, gone. Still, with Kurz's temperament, Ryan suspected the Dark Angel really did have some ace up his sleeve against Lorgar. Attacking Lorgar now required care. One wrong move, and the whole thing could capsize. "Find an opportunity to talk with the guide in Gilliman," Ryan ordered. He summoned Azrael and the senior Dark Angels to report on the battle, to replay it and find what needed to change. Meanwhile, in the Gaetan world, the players were celebrating victory. They had cleaned out the coffers of the purged noble families and were holding a lavish banquet. Director Qi held a 1,000-year-old bottle of wine in one hand and a huge steak in the other. He took a sip and a bite, eyes bright. "This is incredible." The resurrected Silent Night Sky shouted, clinking his cup and digging in. Eating and drinking in Warhammer OL didn't affect the real Holy Terra, but the taste was indistinguishable. And with the physical upgrades of Primaris Space Marines, these avatars could do everything a Terra native could, and some things Terra couldn't. The newly freed populace joined the revelry. Fireworks, mechanically themed, filled the night sky. "It's been a long time since I felt this kind of pure happiness," Director Qi said, taking another long swallow. After entering society with cars and houses, life felt suffocating. The Esperanto at his side nodded. "Playing the game, life doesn't need so many constraints, but we still can't escape other people's eyes." A player nearby, ID, Unlucky Car Dealer, added, "I keep asking myself, what's the point of life?" "Time erases everything," another said. "I used to fear death, but after seeing it, it doesn't seem like much." A firework burst in the shape of gears and pistons, and player ID Shy Starfish shouted, "Life has no meaning. We're born to be loyal to the Emperor." "Old men, stop overthinking," someone else laughed. "Shake off the gloom and enjoy yourselves." Laughter broke out. They'd had a little wine and nostalgia crept in, silly things to worry about when you were playing Warhammer OL. Simplicity was the answer. Be loyal, move on. Rumination led to heresy. "For the Emperor!" Director Qi bellowed, and the others echoed him. The party went on until they were sprawled and drunk, Considering Primaris metabolism, 2 or 3 hours later, most were already sobered. Alcohol was processed astonishingly quickly. On Nocturne, in the blazing heart of the Death Volcano, Qin Yun set the Adeptus Mechanicus to work forging a magnificent furnace. With Shiling's help, it went up in record time. Deep in the tunnel, a forge bristling with cutting-edge augmetics and ancient smithing tradition took shape. Qin Yun gathered the Salamander's master forgers and asked them to help craft weapons and armor. "It is an honor, guide," Sistine said. "The honor is mine, to work with masters such as you," Qin Yun replied. When the Carcharodon's chapter master Tiberius asked to join, Qin Yun, after consulting the Salamander's masters, let him. Tiberius's own pair of giant power claws, Hunger and Thirst, had been forged by him after a drunken inspiration and relentless hammering. They could rip through Tyranid hive tyrants and dreadnoughts alike. He promised the quality would rise another level with his help. Tushan watched Tiberius with a curl of unease. He'd known the Carcharodons before he was a chapter master. Aggressive, bloody, always radiating killing intent. Tiberius, in particular, left nothing but ruin in his wakes. Yet before the guide, he behaved with almost servile obedience. Tushan suspected the Carcharodons hadn't changed. Their deference was special treatment, and their contempt for the Salamanders remained. Rumors had even reached him of abductions, skilled Nocturne residents being recruited by the Carcharodons. Tushan made sure they were kept in check. Once everyone had gathered, the forge breathed fire. The Death Volcano's heat powered the furnace. Rare metals from across the galaxy were melted and alloyed to strict proportions and hammered again and again. In an age of skyscraping tech, such old-fashioned smithing seemed quaint, but in the universe of Warhammer, tech and mysticism had equal say. Weapons forged by hand carried a forger's spirit and would unleash might beyond any cold calculation. Together, they produced a suit of armor, primary green with black and gold trims, shoulder and chest embellishments bearing lion heads. A longsword, pommel carved into a lion's visage, was wrapped in leather and polished. After the final touches, Qin Yun placed the finished pieces on a high platform. First, he blessed the armor, weaving in warp wards to protect its wearer. From his dimensional repository, he withdrew a shard of authority taken from Nurgle's body, a small piece, but humming with a terrible, ancient power. Qin Yun wondered how many divine pantheons Nurgle had consumed to gather such shards. Every drop of that bloated god's blood had once been a god's authority. Soon that power would be wielded by humanity. Sistine, Tiberius, and the others stared, feeling the shard's wrongness. This was not a thing mortals should claim. "The forest shard is fit for the son of the forest," Qin Yun murmured. He had felt Lion awaken into the power of Caliban. This armor would complete that ascent. He set the shard onto the breastplate and intoned an old rite. The shard's light spread in a slow, rhythmic glow, sank into the metal, and strange sigils crawled along the plates before dimming to normal. The armor would keep Ryan always in the forest's presence, allowing him to borrow its strength. He then blessed the sword, endowing it with anti-warding properties to pierce warp enchantments and strike at demons. The last of his shards was gone. Qin Yun had only those few he'd scavenged when the Emperor bled Nurgle for rule-breaking. There wasn't much to spare. Satisfied, Qin Yun praised the Master Forgers. He then summoned the War Master and the Emperor Numa battle group players. Holy summoning meant Qin Yun could call them from anywhere. "Deliver the armor and sword to the lion," he ordered. "Mission accepted, guaranteed," came the enthusiastic reply. Tasks that increased a Primarch's favor were always popular. Using the Imperium's Stargate and the Webway, they crossed the Great Rift in a few days and placed Qin Yun's work into Ryan's hands. By then, Ryan was in full-scale offensive against the Midnight Lords, driving them back and shredding their ranks. He donned the armor at once. It amplified his power to lethal effect. Demons and heretics fell before him like melons being split. Conrad Kurz's Dark Empire suffered massive losses. Key warp routes fell under siege, and the encirclement tightened around Lorgar. And yet, Kurzi was gathering strength too, as if he truly meant to confront his brother on Lorgar. To prevent disaster, Ryan initiated a strategy conference and asked Gilliman and the guide to assess Kurz's intentions. As the three connected, Ryan thanked Qin Yun. "Guide, the armor fits perfectly, and the defenses are incredible. I feel more confident facing Kurz now. Armor? Gilliman looked puzzled. It's the set I'm wearing, Ryan said. The guide forged it and blessed it. Its protection is unmatched. Gilliman turned a touch green with envy. He and the guide had known each other far longer. Why had Qin Yun given Ryan a set and not him? I didn't expect the guide to be a smith, Gilliman complained. He never once mentioned it. I thought we trusted one another, he added. If the guide can craft such things, why did he give Ryan armor and not me? I already have the armor of fate and the Emperor's sword, but still, he could have mentioned it. Qin Yun gave a rueful smile. Regent, you have the armor of fate and the Emperor's sword. What good would another suit do? I didn't bring it up for that reason. I simply worried the lion would face the Midnight Lords and sent him what he needed. Gilliman's face softened, only to darken a beat later when Ryan praised the guide's understanding of the warp. Gilliman knew the armor of fate's purpose, sustaining his life and guarding his soul, but the gift of the guide stung all the same. Qin Yun realized he'd misjudged the political optics. He had Shieling call in Archangel Sanguinius as well. During the Second Empire, the Archangel had been indispensable. If these two Primarchs kept bickering, Qin Yun thought the Gilliman Great Rebellion and a Lion Great Rebellion might erupt sooner or later. Sanguinius and players like Two Dragon Souls were busy hunting soul fragments, but the Archangel's presence was not hard to procure. Sanguinius's radiant projection appeared, and he took in the tense air at once. Ryan in new armor, Gilliman's sour look, and Qin Yun's anxious expression. Lion, that armor suits you, Sanguinius said approvingly. I never thought the guide had such craftsmanship. Both flattering and stinging, his words left Qin Yun speechless. The old joke about Sanguinius, golden on the outside, black-hearted within, seemed truer today than ever. Sanguinius glanced between Gilliman and Qin Yun, then grinned like a conspirator. I wonder, the Archangel said, if the guide might forge a set for me and Gilliman. Of course, Sanguinius added magnanimously. If the guide finds it troublesome, I don't need mine. Just make one for my brother Gilliman. He's out on the front lines facing chaos and Xenos. He's the one who needs it. As for me, I'm barely counted as living at the moment, so danger doesn't trouble me. Qin Yun stared at the Archangel, thinking, I transmigrated into Warhammer, not dream of the Red Chamber. Why does this sound like Lin Dayu saying, if I make my brother feel embarrassed, then it's my fault? P.S. Today's output was so-so, average state, 4,000 words to hit the count. 274. Kabanda and Archangel's love at first sight. This is a minor thing. If you like, I can take the time to forge a suit of armor and a weapon for each of you, Qin Yun said slowly, choosing each word as he looked at Sanguinius, who was wreathed in his unearthly light. He had originally wanted Sanguinius to step forward to ease the tension between Gilliman and the Lion. Now he was being asked to provide armor and weapons for both Primarchs. Qin Yun felt put upon. He was being used by the Archangel, almost bled dry. The Archangel's generosity is boundless, Sanguinius said with a smile. If Karbanda had seen that expression, he would have melted again. It had been on Cygnus that Karbanda's life had been ruined the first time he saw Sanguinius smile. With the promise to forge equipment for the two Primarchs, the argument over gear finally died down. Conversation turned to Lorgar. The projection device hummed and cast a star map into the air. Brilliant constellations and the location of Lorgar were outlined before the three Primarchs and Qin Yun. Lorgar is where Conrad Curzay was assassinated by the Assassinorum, Gilliman began. He chose that site as the capital of his new empire. There has to be some reason for that. Conrad Kurz is treacherous and cunning, the Lion said sharply. Agreeing to a decisive battle at Lorgar reeks of a trap. Gilliman's brows tightened. Qin Yun sighed inwardly. These two were impossible, arguing even when there was nothing to argue about. Sanguinius intervened, calm and conciliatory. Clarifying the possibilities helps everyone think along the same lines. For Kurz to be so confident, whatever's at Lorgar is either a warp-spawned malignancy or an ancient technological relic, Sanguinius said, then shot Qin Yun a look that said, Don't worry, boss. I've accepted the favor, and I'll keep these two from tearing each other apart. Qin Yun felt both relieved and more exploited. Apparently nothing got done without a payment. If he had withheld the equipment, the feud would have continued. The politics of Holy Terra were too treacherous. He'd rather be dealing with Calix's sector. Could it be the Nemesis Blade? Guilliman suggested, and at once Sanguinius and the Lion exchanged worried expressions. After Horus's rebellion, one of the most significant revelations was the Nemesis Blade, an artifact that could lock on to a target and unleash devastating power against it. Horus had been grievously wounded by such a weapon and had failed to heal. His apothecaries could not save him. The trauma sent Horus to the Daven Temple and set in motion tragic events. Weren't those warp creations destroyed after the heresy? The Lion asked. Troops were sent to eradicate them. Guilliman answered. He had ordered it himself, but no one could be sure that the traitors hadn't stockpiled or reforged new Nemesis blades. Don't worry, Qin Yun said. I'll account for that when I forge the armor. If anyone is struck by a Nemesis blade, the armor can expel the malignant warp energies and preserve the Lion. That too? The Lion looked over his armor, pleased. Saint, you truly are considerate. Sanguinius added, besides the Nemesis blade, Curze might have other ancient artifacts. Many civilizations have arisen across the galaxy. Surely some possess technologies we cannot even imagine. That's the problem, Guilliman said. Without intelligence, we don't know what trump cards the enemy holds. If all else fails, we could orbital bombard Lorgar and avoid a direct confrontation, Guilliman proposed. The Lion shook his head. Kurz isn't a fool. He must have counters to orbital bombardment. On Gaddon, he vanished into the dark and escaped in plain sight. If we bombard, he'll escape. We must bring him to justice, make him kneel before the Emperor and atone. Capturing our brother alive won't be easy. Guilliman glanced at Qin Yun. If we must land on the surface and fight under unknown conditions, we'll need the Saint's support to guarantee success. All eyes turned to Qin Yun. Only he could ignore spatial and temporal distances to intervene with immediate support. Very well, be prepared. When the Lion attacks Lorgar, I'll bring the God Chosen to assist, Qin Yun promised. With the Saint's help, defeating Conrad Curze should be doable, Guilliman said. We may be able to bring this scoundrel back to Holy Terra soon. The problem is Curze's darkness transform, his ability to become shadow and vanish, the Lion warned. If he escaped from Gaddon, he can escape from Lorgar. Then we'll blockade the planet. Qin Yun's suggestion sounded audacious. Using Necron-derived technology, they could pull Lorgar into a pocket dimension, severing its link to the galaxy. Since Trazyn the Infinite had submitted and shared technology, and Sheeling had acquired much of it, humanity's dimensional tech now rivaled the Necrons. Enclosing an entire world in a dimensional space was insane, but feasible. That's viable, the Lion agreed. If we pull Lorgar into a pocket dimension, Kurz can't escape. I support it, Guilliman said. I'll arrange transport for the dimensional device. Lion, clear the neighboring systems and isolate Lorgar. Understood. The Primarchs and Qin Yun finalized their plan to capture Conrad Kurz alive. As soon as the meeting broke, preparations began. On Lorgar, a towering spire rose over a city of perpetual night. Strings of corpses hung from its eaves, and the Midnight Lord's skull and bat sigil marked every wall. Conrad Curze stood on the balcony atop that tower, looking down over his realm of fear, an empire that enforced order through terror. The Midnight Lords were his citizens, bound to lawfulness in a perverse way. They demanded justice, insisted on restraint, and wielded the law as both shield and weapon, accepting only what they deemed rightful compensation and never overreaching. Above all, they thrived on fear. Your presence has been brought before you, my lord, Talos, the 10th prophet, reported as he entered and bowed. Conrad Curze turned to look at his son. Talos felt that same cold, probing scrutiny as if the Primarch could see straight to his soul. Bring him, Conrad Kurz said, his voice an icy jailer's whisper. A man was dragged forward and collapsed at Kurz's feet, trembling in terror the moment he saw the Primarch. 5 days ago, you were beaten by members of the Voodoo Gang. Why did you endure it? Why did you not report it? Why did you not fight back? Curze moved like a ghost, one moment on the balcony, the next behind the man. I thought it was a small matter, the man stammered, eyes fixed on the ground. Small matter? Kurz sneered. Cowardice invites evil. Your retreat emboldens wrongdoers and creates more victims. I didn't want trouble. I didn't want to get mixed up in it. The man's voice trembled. Please, righteous Midnight Lords, I haven't committed a crime. Kersey suddenly loomed over him, leaning down so his black eyes met the mortal's face. Cowardice is a sin. Your cowardice will harm others. That is a sin. The man's gaze locked in those obsidian eyes. Tears sprang up. I was wrong. Please forgive me, Lord of the Midnight Lords. I was wrong. Kurz lifted the man's chin with a clawed hand. The metal talon nicked the skin. A bead of blood welled at the man's chin. Then Kurz swung and severed one of his hands. As the arm fell, the man screamed, blood spurting down. Remember, if you resist evil, you may die. If you do not resist, you also die. This is a lesson. Go and tell everyone, when they yield to evildoers, they aid and abet them. The screaming man was dragged away. The hall's torches dimmed, the sounds faded, and darkness reclaimed the vast chamber. Conrad Kurza stood in the gloom for a long moment, then called, "Come out." Figures in black robes slid from the shadows. "The Midnight Lords remain as powerful and just as ever," the leading robed figure proclaimed. Conrad Kurza's gaze rested on the jagged question mark symbols stitched on their garments. He did not hide his dislike for these secretive men who lurked in corners, trying to manipulate the fate of the galaxy. "Did you come merely to flatter me?" Kurz asked coldly. "Not at all," the robed man replied. "We are here to advise caution. Now is not the time to confront the lion. The outsider will aid him. You are isolated and risk defeat." "This concerns only me," Kurza said, his form dissolving into black mist and then solidifying behind them. "Do not presume that lending a small favor gives you the right to command me." "We mean to preserve the balance of the galaxy," the robed man persisted, feigning calm, even as Kurza's claws hovered near his face. "You are but one element. The galaxy is not all. Beyond it lie forces you cannot conceive." "The Tyrantid's arrival is proof," another added. "Beyond the galaxy are entities as terrible as the Chaos Gods, some, perhaps, far stronger." Kurza's brow creased. Had these men contacted threats from outside the stars? "The matter between me and the lion is settled," Kurz said. "You need say no more. I will defeat him." "That is a grave mistake," the robed man warned. "You will regret it." "If you persist," Kurze said, "you may not live to regret it." He examined his claws with a sardonic smile. The robed man yielded. "Last time we gave you an ancient relic that could limit a Primarch's power," he said. "Now we give you another, to increase your chance of victory." A heavy metal chest was carried forward. When it opened, inside lay a pair of gleaming power claws, etched with dense archaic runes and humming with unfamiliar energy. "These claws were forged in ancient techniques and blessed by an outer god," the robed man explained. "With this weapon, the lion will fall." "Which outer god?" Kurze asked, wary. Anything God touched usually concealed a trap. "We used the knowledge left by the Old Ones to reach beings beyond the galaxy," the robed man said. "They blessed these claws. Their power is immense." Kurz turned the claws over in his hands. He had long considered the Chaos Gods the greatest threat to mankind. That there might be gods beyond the galaxy stretched his mind. "What do you want in return?" he asked. No favor in this universe was without cost. "We want nothing," the robed man claimed. "We only act to keep the galaxy balanced and prevent any one power from dominating. We wish you success." They retreated into the shadows. Left alone, Kurzi weighed his options and then donned the claws. Tested against metal, they cut like a blade through soft flesh. His confidence in a coming victory over the lion grew. If the outsider the robed men spoke of failed to appear, no matter. If he did, Kurze would handle him the same as the lion. He would grow in the dark corners of the Imperium until the day he toppled Gilliman, strode into the Imperial Palace, stood before his crippled father on the throne, and declared himself right. On a distant world named Lithea, the players of the Emperor Numa battle group were on a mission. They had delivered the lion's armor and sword and stayed behind. There was a war to be fought here, and war points could be earned quickly. As Lithea's red sun rose, the reconquest ended. The Midnight Lords and Chaos adherents were slaughtered. The battlefield was strewn with broken corpses and charred fortifications. In desperation, the surviving Midnight Lords released a caged monster, the tattooed Count Scalewag. Scalewag was a consummate villain. Born to nobility, he preyed on the poor for sport and later escalated to torturing and murdering the children of rivals. Captured and sentenced to death, he had been spared and thrown back among the Midnight Lords to become a commander. There, he grew worse, arranging death row inmates and assassins into his own 45th Company to serve him, and leading coups that plunged his homeworld back into clan rule. In the Battle of Sotha, he acquired a demonic blade that let him crush competitors and seize command when Conrad Kurz and Sevatar were absent. He led the Midnight Lords into the battle for Terra, was hurled from the city walls by the 3 expeditionary heroes, then thrown into the warp by a demon to suffer 666 years. When he returned, he had merged with a daemon and became the Tattooed Count. When Talos summoned the Midnight Lords, Scalewag arrived, eager to lord it over others. Instead, he was brutally beaten by Conrad Kurz for his meanness and locked in a cage. His family had been at the heart of the Legion's rot. Their assassination of the planetary governor and their collusion had brought the Legion to ruin. Scalewag came to seize power and got nothing but humiliation. Released now, his fury led him into the hands of the players of the Emperor Neuma battle group. The players were masters of combat and equipment and treated Scalewag, even as a demon prince, with no deference. They mocked and humiliated him, reenacting the siege of Terra scene in exquisite cruelty. Radnor, the Blood Angel's first captain, who had thrown Scalewag into the warp and shattered his pride. From his grand entrance to his undignified fall, the players made a spectacle of him. Scalewag's composure snapped. "I will make you die," he roared, thunderous and desperate, but the players only laughed and pressed every advantage. They beat him into numbness. For all his demon power, Scalewag was reduced to a groveling thug. Joining Chaos had given him no immunity to being beaten like a common street ruffian. When he was incapacitated, Warmaster produced a dimension cube that pulsed with a misty glow, an item to imprison the Tattooed Count for later exchange with the guide for rewards and war points. "Let me seal him!" A small player with the handle Marginal Civilization rushed forward. "All right." Warmaster handed over the cube. Marginal Civilization snapped it open and intoned with mock solemnity. "Tattooed Count Scalewag, you are guilty of unforgivable betrayal against Imperial law. In the name of the Emperor's enforcers, I strip you of your powers and seal you for apprehension. Surrender now!" The players stood silent for a beat, then erupted in laughter as the cube closed. Scalewag's world froze. He was trapped in that instant, sealed inside the dimension cube. With the Tattooed Count captured, the Midnight Lord's resistance collapsed. The players purged the traitors on Lethea and implemented the Imperial New Deal. They had just begun planning the reclamation of the next planet when an urgent message arrived from the Lion. They were to assemble on Talsar to prepare to assist in the capture of the Midnight Wraith, Conrad Kurz. "I'm having a bad night, so I'll take a day off. I've fallen in love with the thrill of slacking off. One lazy day first. No need to rush, folks." 276. Keep giving up and keep taking another day off. I don't feel like writing. I'm too lazy to move. Since I still have leave left, I'll keep resting. The players of the Emperor Neuma battle group had evacuated the planet and returned to their fleet, centered on the battleship Exemplar St. Fist. They set course for Tarsus World. They were not alone. Players embedded with the Dark Angels chapter were racing there as well. Even putting aside the generous rewards for an urgent operation, simply witnessing a duel between 2 Primarchs was reason enough to hurry. Days later, the fleet exited the warp at Mandeville Point, engaged conventional drives, and made for Tarsus. Much of the Imperial Armada was already gathered. "Combat has been raging here," Dahai, the fleet commander, said as he checked the auger readings. Warp traffic, plasma signatures, and scattered void debris all pointed to a brutal engagement. Outside the viewport, the void itself showed the scars of war. Shattered hulls drifted, their torn plates sparking with electrical arcing. "The Midnight Lord's void forces have been broken," Warmaster observed. "Kurze should be pinned down on the surface." Warmaster stood with his arms folded at the observation window. At the system's edge, engines flared like a belt of tiny suns as a dense battle fleet held position. At its center hung the Dark Angel's mobile fortress, the Rock, surrounded by a ring of towering pillar-like devices drifting in the void. "This time he shouldn't be able to run," someone muttered. Shi-Lang peered at a nearby console, showing the disposition of Imperial forces. Dark Angel's subchapters, dozens of player organizations, many of them newcomers who had missed earlier data packs. For them, the Lion and Conrad Kurz's showdown was a piece of living history. As the players buzzed with excitement, the rock shifted. Beams of light shot from the fortress to the floating pillars. The columns resonated, bathing the surrounding void in a brilliant glow that pulsed in time. Those fluctuations built into a wave that swept toward Tarsus' world. Under everyone's gaze, the planet wavered, then was drawn into a pocket dimension, cut off from the rest of the Imperium. A pocket dimension, Warmaster said with a wry laugh. The Lion's terrified Kurz will run again. Shishi Lang nodded. Kurz's stealth is legendary. He hid for months on the indomitable truth and slaughtered a number of the Lion's descendants. The Rock has issued attack orders. Dahai's voice cut through the conversation. Then we answer. For the Emperor, the Warmaster shouted. At the exemplar St. Fist, the hangars turned into a furnace of activity. Fighters and shuttles were winched onto launch rails by massive mechanical arms. Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests completed diagnostics, and squadrons catapulted into the void. Transport barges peeled off larger freighters in clusters of glittering points, carrying troops, mechs, and heavy vehicles. Behind them came the logistics vessels, loaded with weapons, ammunition, rations, water, and fuel, everything needed for a full-scale assault. The drop fleet swarmed toward the atmosphere. Entry wakes sheared the clouds into lazy vortices. Ground batteries opened up immediately, tracer and flak stitching the sky. Explosions stuttered across the air, and here and there transports bearing the Imperial Aquila blew apart into burning debris. On the comms channel, players whispered prayers and grim jokes. Hope I don't get insta-killed this run. Emperor above. Watch over me. Kill, kill, slash, slash. They all knew the drill. Some unlucky ones were lost the instant they arrived, only to reconnect after the fighting was over. Prepare to unleash the summons. Release the flyers first, came the order. Warmaster stood at a transport hatch, bracing against the turbulent winds from nearby detonations. Inside the cargo bay, a dozen rune-etched crates sat waiting. The activation code lit their surfaces. Sigils flared and opened roaring teleportation apertures. From the rifts poured winged alien beasts enslaved by control grids, driven like living weapons. The flyers dived toward the surface under player control and drew the defenders' fire. Players then launched themselves from altitude, igniting personal flight thrusters and streaking for the Midnight Lord's fortress. On the stronghold's ramparts, Talos frowned up at the sky. His precognitive sight, sharper even than the sorcerer's Abaddon kept, suddenly hiccuped, then collapsed into noise and false images. His thoughts boiled down to one furious conclusion. These God-chosen are a problem. Enemy drop! The alarm clamored through the fortress as the shield system came alive, throwing a violet void screen across the city. Rampart guns opened up, raining dense flak and fire into the falling sky. Talos switched his helm to observation mode. The visual enhancers zoomed outward and painted the approach in bloody detail. Alien flyers tore through the anti-air and shredded under the guns. Many were tyrannids. Is the Imperium colluding with the Great Devourer? Talos whispered, incredulous. Before that thought could settle, players used the Tyrannid diversion to breach the void shield and began to land on the battlements. Silent Night Sky was the first over the wall, shouting a battle cry as he fired. Bolter rounds chewed through the closest defender, ripping him apart. More players followed, hammering at the defensive emplacements to seize gun platforms. Engage! Drive them out! Talos barked, slamming the orders through the ranks. Below, the melee formed. The defenders fought to reclaim the walls as teleport gates spat more abominations and player avatars clambered across battered crenellations. The fortress shook under the thrust of the assault. P.S. I only managed 1,500 words on the 29th, then didn't write again until today, when I barely added another 500. I'll have to file for more leave. I haven't relaxed or written, and sitting at the keyboard, I had no ideas at all. My head's full of doubt. I keep worrying that every choice I've made in life has been the wrong one. Chapter 269, Conrad Kurz. Today I shall avenge my broken back. 10,000-word update. When the alarm screamed, Conrad Kurz walked to the window. Warships hung in orbit above the planet, and Imperial soldiers performed airborne deployment. The Lion was about to unleash his wrath on this world, to purge sin with iron justice. Hiss, a savage, indescribable pain tore through Conrad's head. The Primarch gasped, his face contorted. Visions of the future flickered and dissolved into chaos, the way the 10th prophet Talos had described. Wherever those God-chosen appeared, the future went mad, able to twist the strands of fate themselves. "Father," Conrad muttered, "is this your new trump card against the gods?" The Midnight Lords around him were used to their Primarch's madness. When he fell silent, one of them stepped forward and reported, "Talos has sent word. The God-chosen have scaled the walls." Conrad bared white, razor teeth. "They are certainly fast. Activate the device according to plan and trigger all the traps," the Midnight Lord ordered. A black-robed figure stepped out of the shadows. "This is your last chance. With the Staff of Creation, you can break the dimensional blockade and leave Tarsus World safely. If the Lion destroys that artifact, you will be trapped here by the Rift and become prisoners of the Imperium. In the current balance of power, you will have no escape." Conrad's pale face broke into a terrible smile. "Say another word and I'll kill you before I deal with the Lion." The gaze he fixed on the robed man chilled him to the bone. Even one who knew the galaxy's oldest secrets and how to bargain with the outer gods found himself cowed by the Midnight Ghost. "When you fail, I hope you won't regret it," the robed figure managed. He turned and vanished back into the darkness before Conrad could decide whether to rip him apart. Only when the other's aura had completely faded did Conrad look out again, face hard. "This is my home turf. I will not lose." As dusk fell, the sky became a fury of exploding artillery and blinding beams. The windows of towering structures trembled as light stabbed across the heavens. Starships clashed in chaotic dogfights, their weapons carving brief, brilliant constellations. Bullets and energy bolts filled the air. Bolter rounds thundered like a lethal hailstorm. Inside the fortress, its passages full of spikes and snares, a brutal cacophony of fighting echoed. Thousands of players formed the spearhead of the assault, smashing into the Midnight Lord's defenses. Explosions bloomed wherever they advanced, spitting fire and glass. "For the Emperor, for the silent night sky," the War Master cried as he cut down 4 Midnight Lords in an instant, their bodies scattering. "I haven't even used much strength. Why are you all falling?" Shi Lang, swinging a staff and sending psychic lightning at dark Mechanicum servitors, grinned. "I shout whatever comes to mind." The War Master's banter with his companions carried over the chaos. "Are you trying out the female Bodhisattva cosplay now?" Shi Lang teased. "If you want to be Sun Wukong, I'll have Dora Workshop forge you a flight device and 72 transformations. From now on, call me Grand Sage Grandpa." They traded insults while demons and Midnight Lords surged ahead. Nearby, Zhuge and Haigui finished a pair of enemies, blood dripping from their blades. They joked and argued about gods, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Khorne, Slaanesh, musing absurdly on philosophy, even as the battlefield ate the unwary. The War Master's smile froze when something howled down the corridor. Shadows rolled like a tide, swallowing light. The darkness spilled across the floor like ink in water, thick and viscous. Eyes glowed in its depths, and warp-spawned horrors leaped into the light, wailing as they charged the players. "This again?" Shi Lang muttered. "These traitors always call their warp daddies when they can't win." "Without the warp, they've forgotten how to fight," the War Master said. He switched weapons, the greatsword replaced by 2 long swords etched with state church runes. Drones launched, blessed gun barrels whirred to life. The warp-formed hounds and hunched monsters poured forward, bolter rounds and las beams cutting into them. The players, equipped with top-tier gear, tore the demons apart, banishing many back to the Immaterium. "Advance! Capture the Midnight Ghost alive!" the War Master barked, and they pushed toward the fortress core. The first echelons fought through the demon tide with relative ease, but not everyone fared so well. Director Chi's squad met a colossal, rotting toad. Its foul tongue lashed out, striking a player 10 meters away. The power armor dented and cracked. The player slammed against the corridor and slumped dead. Holy hell, that tongue! Silent Night Sky rolled to evade a hound-like demon, fired point-blank into its maw, and watched its head explode. "Switch to blessed weapons! Ordinary guns don't cut it against demons," Director Chi shouted. "Form up in small teams." They reformed and held, but a black shadow, Silent Swift, slashed. Silent Night Sky dodged, but not far enough. The blade severed his arm. The suit's medical systems injected nanomeds and sealed the wound. Repair foam sprayed to close the gap. As a Midnight Lord leapt in to finish him, a spear flew and pinned the traitor to the wall. Director Qi had thrown himself between them and, with a blast from his bolter, ended the Night Lord's life. Good work, Silent Night Sky managed, giving a thumb to Director Qi. More demons surged. Form ranks. Hold steady, Director Qi ordered. The players, shouting slogans and clutching their purpose, pushed forward. But Conrad's fortress was a maze of traps. Corners that seemed safe concealed blasting charges. Other corridors sprayed fire. Spiked trucks thundered through passages, impaling power-armored players and crushing them into logs. The front line, which had seemed unstoppable, began to thin. Logged-off players flooded the Warhammer OL forums with furious complaints about Conrad Kurz's inhuman traps, half gloat, half envy. On the rock fortress, Azrael led the Dark Angel's guard to the observation deck to find the Primarch. Through glass panels, they could see the ship's engine motors the size of cities, ramming prows, and ports that could shelter battleships. The Lion stood alone on the darkened observation deck, the only light from distant stars and the glow of engines. He was not admiring the heavens. He watched Tarsus World, the dimensional device that held it, and streams of battlefield data. Azrael, the Lion said without turning. Primarch. Azrael knelt. The guards mirrored him. The Lion waited until Zabriel and other fallen angel officers emerged from the shadows. Rise, he ordered. A tactical hologram sprang up, scanning the war zone. Runes and markers displayed Imperial deployments. Warp readings are spiking. The enemy is using warp reinforcements, Ezekiel, chief librarian, reported. There's a powerful anchor that's connecting the warp to Holy Terra. Can you lock onto it? The Lion asked. Yes, Ezekiel said. We've been monitoring it since it appeared. Then let us end this, the Lion said. They passed the Avenue of Heroes and entered the teleportation hall. Tech priests chanted and chittered as the device spun up. Scriptures danced on the edge of the void. Teleport path established, the head tech priest announced. With a flash, the Lion and his force blinked onto the battlefield, at the very hall where the warp anchor pulsed. The world around them shifted under etheric pressure. Cold currents brushed their skin, and faint, mournful howls echoed from an abyss. When the nausea passed, they stood in a stark hall hung with the bones of criminals. At its center sat an altar of bone-like material, and above it floated a great staff crackling with power, an ancient staff of creation. Runes breathed and pulsed like a living thing. Around the altar, shadows pooled at the edge of the light. This must be the warp anchor, the Lion said. He could see Conrad and his sons seated in the darkness. The others only perceived shadow. As the Lion called, the Midnight Lords and warped monstrosities swarmed. The Lion roared and cut through them like a storm. Azrael and other Imperial heroes guarded his flanks, steels and shields crackling with energy. The Lion moved like a living gale, too fast for heavy guns to track, too solid for light weapons to cut. The Midnight Lords fell in spirals of blood. From the dark throne, Conrad rose to meet him. Steel struck claw, sparks and ripples of psychic energy flared. "Welcome to my kingdom, brother," Conrad said. "You seem very pleased," the Lion replied. Conrad sneered. "To rule the stars, fear is the only true tool. Under me, crime dropped to single-digit percentages across the planets." "Sounds efficient," the Lion said dryly. "And your prophecies? Where were they when Devine burned?" Mention of prophecy tightened Conrad's jaw. Sanguinius's intervention on Devine had ruined his forecasts. He had been blind to what really happened. He had begged Sanguinius to let him see their father. Instead, Sanguinius had thrown him into the void. He had been left to rage alone. "You were blinded by glossy prophecies and unwittingly made a tool of the gods," the Lion continued. "Your empire is another misstep." "You speak like Dorn," Conrad snapped, fangs bared. "Speak all you want. Once I have you in my hands, you'll be corrected." The two titans clattered and tore at each other, sending metaphysical currents of Tzeentch energy and the darkness of Caliban thrashing at each other. The Lion's forested domain of will pushed back the gloom. Small robed figures would flicker into being in the woods, waving torches that drove the darkness back and then vanished, weakening Conrad's influence. On the field, the Lion landed a crushing blow with the Emperor's shield, sending Conrad slamming through pillars. 10,000 years ago, you were no match, the Lion said, and you are still not. Conrad coughed blood. Too early to celebrate, he rasped. He brought the staff to bear. Ancient energies screamed. If you were not here, I could have won. With a terrible explosion, the staff detonated. The warp anchor imploded outward in a terrifying wave, tearing the hall asunder. Warp creatures screamed and were ripped away. The force slammed into everything, throwing combatants like leaves. Players arriving at the entrance were flung backward. The targeted blow, however, took aim at the lion. Some unbearable force hoisted the Primarch and slammed him down. The impact shattered armor and body. A malignant power flooded him. Where flesh would have been dust, the lion's body was torn, armor ripped, skin scorched, the forest-like aura of his being withering. Leaves fell, trunks rotted. The robed figures poured green light and water on the trees, patching them, but it was a palliative. Didn't expect this, lion. I will detonate the relic, Conrad said, striding over and hoisting the lion by the throat. This is for you. With a sick crack, the lion's spine broke beneath the blow. The Primarch cried out, hair disheveled. Players who had glimpsed it froze. The lion had just been broken. Revenge? Silent Night Sky breathed. Of course, others answered grimly, half jesting about backbreaking as a running gag among Primarchs. Stop messing around, Shi Lang snapped. If something happens to the lion, the plot will derail. Protect him. Players surged forward with furious cries to defend the Primarch. Azrael and the Dark Angels hacked through enemy lines trying to reach the fallen lion. The Midnight Lords roared and blocked their way. Conrad tossed the lion aside like a conquered trophy. The victor is decided, lion. 10,000 years. This time I win. The lion choked and then laughed through the pain. You think a few rats and an old relic are enough? He rasped. You think that, with tricks, you can triumph? At that moment, a pillar of light split the sky above Tarsus' world. A golden-black sun rose slowly, and a voice, heavenly and terrible, sang. People looked up in awe and fear. Even the players felt it. The War Master spat in annoyance. The Pretender King descends again, he muttered. The guide always liked to stage a show at the best moments. As light poured through the fortress and into the fallen lion, Conrad's face screwed into disbelief. He reached out to stop it and was blown back by the force. Across space, eyes older than time, terrifying and cold, turned on Conrad. Father, he stammered, trembling. Forgive me. I was wrong. The eyes did not speak. They watched with a silence that burned. Light filled the lion. His broken spine knitted itself instantly. Armor repaired itself. Rotting wounds closed as new flesh grew. The forest of his being greened once more. The robed figures cheered and then melted back into the trees. Sanguinius, wrapped in light, descended, shattering fortress stones as he hovered above the field. The lion felt strength return to every sinew, age and wear dissolved. If the one beside me on Macragge had been Sanguinius, Conrad Kurtz would have been nothing, the lion thought. The advantage had shifted fully. Conrad, now struck blind by the Emperor's presence, reeled. His father's stare withdrew without a word. No absolution, no counsel. He felt more pain from the silence than from any strike. He rose and faced the lion. Where is your arrogance now? Relying on outside power is not your way. You broke the rules first, the lion said calmly. Now, fight me fair, Conrad. This is not fair, Conrad howled. He transformed into a black mist and lunged, a storm of striking claws and fury. But Sanguinius, backed by the Lord of Humanity's blessing and the weight of mankind behind him, rained psychic lightning down on Conrad. The Primarch could not keep up with the replenished lion. Conrad's reserves emptied, his storm faltered. I will not lose to you again, Conrad screamed, but he had nothing left. The lion caught him, lifted him, and smashed him down across his knee. Bones snapped with a clear, cruel sound. Conrad shrieked. Once again his spine was broken. The players watched, stunned into silence. Primarchs trading back-breaking blows had become a bizarre spectacle. With Conrad defeated, the Midnight Lords collapsed. The players and Dark Angels rounded them up, killed, captured, or sealed in stasis. Talus, the 10th prophet, had used some unknown trick to slip the dimensional blockade and escape. He was the sole Midnight Lord to get away. The Dark Empire the Midnight Lords had erected disintegrated. The Imperium retook the worlds under Midnight rule. The populace largely cheered, while some of the nobility raged, their power stripped, their privileges gone. The lion's solution was blunt. Those who had betrayed imperial law would face the warp and the Emperor's judgment. While the dust settled over Tarsus, another operation unfolded across the galaxy. The Hunter Demon Battle Group set out to find the Old One's ruins, attempting to restore the nation of Chikandi in exchange for clues about the ruins. P.S. I adjusted back today. Several things happened at once, and I couldn't react. My mood went very low, and I didn't want to write. Now I'm back. I can still write 10,000 characters a day, but I won't change the chapters. 279. There are 5 evil gods in the galaxy? According to the Adeptus Mechanicus's estimates, the galaxy holds some 400 billion stars and nearly 100 billion planets. The Imperium of Man now spans roughly 100,000 light-years, ruling over millions of worlds. Those worlds, however, are not linked by ordinary communication. Only the warp can bridge such distances. When a system is cut off, it can take centuries to rediscover it, if it is ever found at all. The galaxy is vast. There are countless regions beyond human control where entire Xenos empires hide, unseen. Some of those empires were discovered and extinguished by the Imperium. Their worlds were cleansed and reshaped for human settlement. Others never came to humanity's attention at all. After the fall of their homeworld, the Chikandi drifted into those unclaimed regions and became nomads. Today, they shelter in an ancient void fortress known as Void Land. The Hunter Demon Battle Group's fleet ended a long, storm-torn warp run and emerged in the Kritai Bay area, just as the Xenos mercenary Kirka had described. The warships slipstreamed out of the warp with a peculiar sense of distortion and switched to conventional drives. Bearing the double-headed eagle, they moved through real space toward their destination. Soon, the Auspex picked up a massive fortress in range, the artifact called Voidland. Voidland was an ancient relic, the size of a small asteroid. Its origins had been lost to time. The races that visited or lingered there were only transient tenants, not true masters. A jumble of strangely shaped warships had gathered around it. Voidland had become a trading hub where traders and slavers from across the stars bartered for goods, using imperial coin or direct exchange. The Xenos traders had barely noticed the human fleet until it appeared on their scopes. Panic spread immediately. Humans, they're here! It's a whole fleet. Get out. The destroyer god's servants have come. May the gods protect us. Screams filled the market. Merchants shoved their wares into cargo holds and fled. Ships that had been loafing around the fortress ignited and charged outward, trying to reach deep space, to open a warp gate and escape via Tzeentch's caprices. Collisions and accidents happened as vessels jostled, but nobody cared about blame, only speed. Seams were not welcome, Zhongge said, watching the tactical projection of fleeing ships. He wore a wry expression. Look how frightened they are. Weren't they supposed to say humans are hard to befriend, that Xenos want to enslave us? Buchinuru peered at the projection with curiosity. Chirka's explanation made Zhongje, Buchinuru, and the other players exchange interested looks. Why? Bailang asked. Chirki, his brown, fish-like face drawn, answered carefully. You know the 4 chaos gods, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Khorne, Slaanesh, but for most Xenos, there are 5. 5? Bailang counted the first 4 on his fingers. Chirki's twitch betrayed real dread. These humans did not treat the spirits of gods with the reverence most Xenos afforded them. That was dangerous. Don't speak the gods' names aloud, Chirki warned. Why not? Bailang looked puzzled, then started to sing off-key. Khorne, corny, big simpleton, brainless, only knows how to chop, chop, chop. Chirki's face went pale. The more you forbid some of these humans, the more they mocked. Even Lord Rostov's expression shifted. The god-chosen had no piety toward gods. They were, after all, the Emperor's own. There is a 5th god, Chirki cut Bailang off, anxious to avoid further blasphemy. The Chikandi could not risk drawing the god's ire. If the gods punished the human sacrilege by turning on the Chikandi, it would be ruin. Humans had the Emperor's protection. The Chikandi did not. And that god is your Emperor, Chirka said. Other Xenos call him the Destroyer God, and you are seen as the Destroyer God's minions. Among many Xenos, the Imperium was more than a political power. It was a force of annihilation. A single Chaos God could be fought and perhaps overcome if an enemy devoted its full strength. But when the Imperium declared war, there was no winning. The Imperium would return and return, each invasion larger than the last until all resistance was crushed. Better to risk the wrath of the Chaos Gods than to draw the Imperium's focus. Thus, many races preferred to provoke the Chaos Gods rather than provoking humanity. So that's why, Bai Lang said, suddenly enlightened. Shall we fire a few shots then? Not our mission, Zhang Ge replied. We're not here to exterminate other Xenos. Let them go. The galaxy is too big for humans to own every inch. What a pity, Buchi Nuru said, mildly disappointed. Cherky clicked his tongue inwardly. If the players had intended to profit from the trading hub, the merchants of Voidland would have paid for their hubris. I should contact my kin, Cherky said. If they panic, everyone will scatter. Do it, Lord Rostov said. He nodded to Zhang Ge, granting Cheer access to the ship's comms so he could speak to his people. Run, the devils are coming. Terror-filled voices echoed through Voidland as the message was relayed. Residents fled, fearing indiscriminate slaughter. The Aquila emblem, the mere rumors of the Imperium, was enough to silence even the most curious children. Initially, the Chikandi planned to flee. A few macro-cannon broadsides could turn their ships into wreckage. But when Cherky relayed a new message, humans were coming to help them reclaim their homeland, their panic turned to bewilderment. Help us reclaim our home? Their elders whispered. No one trusted the Imperium's mercy. Cooperating with humans could mean leading them to a world and both being wiped out. Still, repeated reassurance from Cherky convinced them to meet. For safety, they laid down conditions. First, the Imperial fleet could not approach Voidland too closely. Second, the meeting must take place aboard a ship they appointed. Third, neither side could bear weapons. They also prepared contingencies. Some of their people boarded evacuation ships and hid deep inside Voidland, ready to flee if humans betrayed them. We accept your conditions, Zhang Ge said after thinking it through. The meeting was arranged. Zhang Ge and Lord Rostov would represent the Imperium in talks with the Chikandi elders. I never thought the day would come when we'd help a Xenos reclaim a nation, Rostov muttered. As an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, he had spent a lifetime opposing Xenos' expansion. He tolerated cooperation only when it was useful and strictly controlled. Assisting a Xenos people to regain sovereignty felt to him dangerously close to heresy. Times change, Inquisitor, Zhang Ge said. We can't cling to old dogma. The Emperor, if he knew the necessity, wouldn't object. The Emperor would not tolerate Xenos, Rostov said. During the Great Crusade, the Xenos were purged. Some passed the test and lived, Bai Lang replied. The Emperor hated religion's corruption even to the point of striking down his own sons. If we applied the old ideal everywhere, the entire state church might be dragged to the pyre. Change the subject, Rostov blurted. Questioning the state church was too dangerous, even for an inquisitor. His words could be used against him. When the negotiation team boarded the Chikandi-appointed vessel, the meeting was stark and tense. Neither side carried weapons. The elders of the Chikandi resembled Cherky, barrel-shaped bipeds with 4 arms, mottled brown skin, fish-like heads, flat noses, 2 rows of sharp teeth, and webbed feet. Welcome, the lead elder bowed. Rostov stepped forward. He had negotiated with Xenos before. Cherky has explained your situation. The Imperium will assist you in reclaiming your homeland. In return, you will give us access to any ruins of the old ones you know of. Through careful diplomacy, they hammered out terms. The Imperium would help restore the Chikandi to their star system and allow the Chikandi sovereignty over their home system. The Chikandi would not harbor insurgents or openly oppose the Imperium. In exchange, they gained vassal rights to trade legally within Imperial space. The treaty was clear, and the 2 sides agreed to a joint reclamation. Still, the elders distrusted humanity. They split their people. Some would stay deep within Voidland to await news. Others would return to the Chikandi homeworld with the Imperium. The fleet set course for that world, Alvin. After a week in the warp, the Imperial fleet dropped out into real space. The void around the ancient fortress shimmered and the fleet moved, engines flaring, toward a fog-shrouded planet, Alvin. The Auspex broadened its scans and found warships and stations in orbit. Those are Nuwu Yao ships, Cherky said. Their numbers and power have increased since the invasion. The Nuwu Yao were the race that had driven the Chikandi from Alvin. Intelligence described them as one-eyed amphibious humanoids who worshipped chaotic powers and relied on psychic arts. They were broad and powerful, with barrel chests, short three-toed legs, long arms, a potent tail, and a smooth, greenish hide. A single pale or amber eye dominated an otherwise potato-like head. "Followers of the gods," Zhongge said with a grin, then turned to the captain. "Open fire. Wipe out those pawns of the gods, void forces, and let us land to cleanse the surface." In orbit, Xi'er, the new Yao overall commander, stared at the approaching Imperial fleet and felt the world tilt beneath him. "How did the Imperium find us?" he asked, but no one could answer with certainty. One scholar pointed out that Chikandi vessels, fish-headed ships, had been seen among the human fleet. Had they betrayed the Nuwu Yao? How dare they cooperate with the humans? Xi'er spat. The Nuwu Yao civilization was built on psychic arts. Their guards were powerful mages dressed as elite infantry, masters of spellcraft and combat. Xi'er ordered every city to raise defensive arrays and prepare to face the world-destroying god's minions. War erupted in Voidland. Human steel-fired torpedoes and macro beams met crystalline Xenos beams and warp-infused projectiles. Explosions blossomed, and enormous ships disintegrated into flaring debris. "How do their ships fly like that?" Bailang stared through the observation port at Nuwu Yao vessels that seemed to defy conventional engineering. "The Warhammer universe lets belief be a kind of physics," Qin Yun said. "If they believe, they fly." "It's a patchwork setting," Zhongge added. "You get fantasy ships stitched into Grimdark space opera. One game, 12 genres." Lord Rostov and his aides exchanged baffled glances at the players' banter. Their speech, if recorded, would have been a mess to any translator. As the battle went on, the enemy command center's lock was reported to the players. "Prepare the teleportation hall," Zhongge ordered. "We board and finish this." The tech priests activated the teleport arrays. Devices hummed and built a field of shimmering light. With a strobing flash and a sense of surrounding reality tearing, the players were inside the enemy command center. The Nuwu Yao froze at the sudden appearance of armored humans. Seconds later, bolter reports cracked the air and tore through armored defenders. "Protect the overall commander," someone shouted. Elite Nuwu Yao guards formed around Xi'er, casting sweeping psychic spells. Lightning and flame arced toward the intruders, but the energies broke apart as they neared. Something about the human presence resisted their magics. A sorcerer stared in disbelief, then felt a searing pain at his neck. Blood sprayed, his head came free, and his favorite staff clattered to the deck. He tried to scream, but a roaring sound filled his mind and his soul was ripped into the warp. "For the Emperor!" Bailang yelled, leaping over the corpse to pounce on the next defender. The assault was brutal and efficient. The Imperial boarding force moved like a single, inexorable machine, and the Nuwu Yao command center began to crumble. "For the Emperor!" P.S. Another 6,000-character chapter. I hope you all like it. The Nuwu Yao are creatures from medieval Warhammer, patched together and used to provide experience for the players. 280. Rivers of Blood. The blade swung, sliced through space, and severed limbs flew into the air. Gravity took them seconds later. They thudded to the ground. Crimson sprayed, staining the soil. In an instant, several well-equipped Nuwu Yao guards were cut down. Their psychic arts meant nothing against this brutal, precise slaughter. Zhongge, Qin Yun, and the other players each tore through their opponents. The Culexus assassins naturally countered psychic powers. The Nuwu Yao civilization had been built on psyker strengths, but against these players, hardened, merciless, those advantages evaporated. Had enemies of other dispositions arrived, the outcome might have differed. The Nuwu Yao were simply unlucky to meet the Demon Hunter battle group. Less than a minute later, the command center lay filled with broken corpses and the metallic tang of blood. "You are devils," the alien commander Xi'er said, voice trembling but defiant. The player's power armor carried translation modules that rendered most alien languages into readable speech. The line came through clear. Zhongge and his squad laughed. "Feels like we're playing Stellaris," one muttered. "Record it. This'll get a ton of views," another added. "Poor things. The fourth calamity is far worse than any god." Xi'er flushed with fury. A scholar could be killed, he thought, but never humiliated. He drew his longsword and adopted a fighting stance. Before he had been a commander, he had been a warrior of note. His psychic talent and martial skill were both formidable. "For honor," He snarled and charged, pouring everything into the blow. His blade, forged with strange rites, shimmered with psychic light, sharp enough to cut through steel. Zhongge met him blade for blade. One flash of light, that was all it took. Xier glanced down as a horrifying wound gaped across his abdomen, armor and flesh rent, so the internal organs showed and wriggled faintly. He made one last, hollow breath and collapsed. Too fast, he thought, dying. Zhongge wiped the blood from his sword, flicking it clean. Decapitation successful, he said flatly. Let the enemy burn among the stars. Qin Yun opened comms and informed Lord Rostov. Order acknowledged, general attack commencing, Rostov replied. The Imperium fleet shifted formation and began its sweep. Artillery roared, dense volleys of missiles and lasers filled the void. Battle barges launched bombers into the night, weaving through clouds of shattered metal and drifting rock. An alien warship, its crystalline prow rent open, tried to hold together, but bombers dove into the breach and dropped melta-charges onto the psychic power core. The core's destruction sent a silent, catastrophic rupture through the ship. Crystal and bone hulls began to crumble. Some of the enemy made a last stand, but the human force crushed them. On the orbital stations, Nuwu Yao rallied but were cut down by boarding players. Corpses were left stacked along corridors. Blood painted the living architecture red. The void battle lasted 5 hours. The Nuwu Yao void fleet was annihilated. Burning wreckage scattered like a jagged constellation. Drifting cadavers populated the dark like satellites. On the surface, the Nuwu Yao looked up at the burning, star-filled sky with faces gone hollow. Zhongji refreshed the battle intelligence, void victory confirmed, and after his squad secured the station, he opened a channel. Communications officer, relay to the fleet. God chosen, message transmitted, the officer replied. Brothers of the Imperium, Zhongji said, voice steady. The enemy void forces have been destroyed. Clear the surface, landing craft, move in and deploy the ground assault. In the name of the Emperor, the response crackled, we take this honor. On Alvin World, the nests rose like black living fortresses, homes, factories, citadels all in one. The largest belonged to the royal court, a monstrous edifice of organic architecture. Doomsday has come, someone whispered. Why do the gods not save us? Indra, supreme king of the Nuwu Yao, stood on a balcony and looked to the sky, grief carved into his features. Their civilization had no answer for a double-headed eagle in orbit. Their entire way of life, based on psychic might and divine supplication, was less than a match for the Imperium. Even pouring every psychic blessing into the fight felt like flinging eggs at stone. Footsteps sounded behind him. Oshame, named for a child blessed by the gods, approached in armor, leading a cadre of guards. Father King, she saluted. Indra turned, astonished. Oshame, why are you here? I heard you planned to send me and my brothers away through the secret prayer ritual, she said. You'd save our bloodline and abandon the world. Humans have found this planet by the betraying fish head's help, and they will ravage everything. It is their nature, Indra said bitterly. They serve that rotten king. Even the gods cannot be counted on. If you go, you might preserve some line. Oshame's eyes hardened. I will not go. I will face this with you. I was blessed. I won't shrink from the fate that is mine. Indra tried to reason. She would not be swayed. I hope you won't regret this, he warned, but could not press the darker truth, that perhaps the gods had already chosen otherwise. A piercing alarm then tore through the hall. Sparks of fire stitched the sky, tumbling like falling stars toward the surface, drop pods, incendiary strikes. The minions of the god of destruction had come. We will never retreat, Oshame shouted. Let the invaders come. We will annihilate them. To the players, the Nuwu Yao were not individually formidable, yet their numbers and stubborn will to resist made the fight bloody. The Demon Hunter battle group parachuted in and was met by immediate charges. The Nuwu Yao hoped to drive them from the landing zones before they could establish footholds. Kill, Zhongge barked, leading his chapter in a countercharge. The clash was brutal and swift. Psyker light surged in Nuwu Yao ranks, blade and warp powering their strikes, until the Culexus presence simply erased those talents. As a Nuwu Yao warrior closed on Zhongje, his psychic glow winked out, his warp energy gone as if it had never existed. In a straight contest of skill and steel, he had no chance. Zhongge's blade lanced through armor and body. Blood, bright and hot, sprayed across the ground. "Kill to your heart's content," he roared, leaving a path of dismembered bodies, shredded fortifications, and crushed foliage behind him. Above him, armed drones opened up on distant foes. Those who hadn't found cover were torn apart. The suppressive fire prevented the enemy from regrouping or forming psychic defenses. Players poured into the breach, and the outer lines collapsed in minutes. The sky burned. Rivers and fields were stained red. Inside the black nests, organic, damp, reeking, citizens and soldiers alike surged to drive out the invaders. They wielded crude weapons and raw courage, but against power armor, drones, and Primaris transformed bodies, they fell in droves. The nests were strange things, curved walls like the chambers of some titanic creature, tissues that pulsed as if breathing. Pus-like fluids writhed beneath the skin of corridors, molds bubbled, the tunnels shifted and reconfigured like living flesh. Fighter formations strafed and bombed, explosions rolled through the nests and made them convulse. "For the Emperor! For Nezuko!" Buchinuru bellowed as he cleaved through damp rooms, drones spitting death in his wake. He lost count of how many he'd killed. Swing, slice, kill, that was all he could think. Oshame led a guard unit into the fray and ran straight into Buchinuru. Their defense collapsed under the human onslaught, her guards shredded, one by one, until only she remained. "How can one man slaughter us like this?" she cried, staring at the ironclad figure towering above her. "For glory," she cried and charged in desperation, but a single precise strike tore her body apart. Buchinuru did not pause. Primaris enhanced, armored and blessed, aided by killer drones, he was unstoppable in this place. Strategy could be discarded. It was a matter of ferocity and endurance. He kept cutting. The players pushed toward the royal court. Nuwu Yao defenses fell away. A trail of corpses marked the breach. The Chikandi elders, long exiles returned, marched into the long-lost throne hall with players at their backs. Indra's face darkened. "To reclaim this world, you even allied with devils." He spat. "Everyone knows they are worse than gods. Partnering with humans leads only to ruin." An elder of the Chikandi laughed. "You used the gods' favor to take Alvin once before. Now you dare to judge us?" Indra's retort died on his lips as a bolt pistol cracked. The head of the presuming alien ruler exploded. Smoke curled from the gun barrel. Chierka stood there, the weapons smoking. With their leader dead, the remaining Nuwu Yao collapsed, but the Imperium and Chikandi had no intention of mercy. The purge of Alvin World would be thorough. The players, however, handed the final cleanup to conventional forces. "Now that we've helped you reclaim your homeland," Zhongge told the elders, "it's time to fulfill your promise." "We will not break our word," one elder said. "Come with us. You will get what you seek." The Chikandi were psychers, too. When the Nuwu Yao had driven them from Alvin World, the Chikandi had sealed the entrance to their library in a dimensional pocket. For years, the Nuwu Yao had been unable to find it. Now, with their homeland reclaimed, that sealed gate reappeared. Led by the elders, the players and Imperial personnel were guided down into a dark, silent underworld of winding tunnels that seemed to reweave themselves with every step. Mapping them was hopeless. At last, they reached the underground library, vast shelves of tomes recording the Chikandi's accumulated wisdom. Their tech was not advanced by galactic standards, but their history was ancient. From the arrival of the Old Ones onward, they had preserved centuries of lore. An elder climbed a platform and took down a glowing crystal. "This starstone," he said, "was given by the Old Ones. Infuse it with psychic power, and it projects a star map. Our ancestors recorded that the map holds coordinates to Old One ruins." He went on, "But we have never deciphered it. We kept it safe, waiting for someone who could." The elder handed the starstone to Lord Rostov. The crystal radiated faintly. Rostov poured psychic power into it. The stone shone and projected a star field, dazzling, but the positions and trajectories were wrong. Strange overlaps, impossible angles. Zhongge glanced twice and felt a headache coming. Other players felt it too. "Why is this map so weird?" someone asked. "Is this some trick?" "We don't know," the elder said honestly. "It's the Old One's work." Zhongge, pragmatic, went live and shared the Starstone feed to the network. The chat exploded. "Warmaster, what the hell is that? Looks like a star map, but the stars overlap. None of this makes sense. Maybe those NPCs were lying to you?" Share coordinates. We should go kick some ruins asses. They dared to trick the fourth calamity. That's a death sentence. Probably not lying. This map may be higher dimensional, 4D, not 3D. Get Sealing to analyze it. Sealing might be right, could be higher dimensional. If so, that's treasure. At Zhang, big bro, take me with you. The chat suggestions gave Zhang Jie a lead. We'll take it and try to decipher its secret, he announced. The Chikandi elders allowed access so long as none of the ancient texts were damaged. Zhongge ordered a full scan of the Starstone and library and uploaded the data to Shieling. As a star god, Shieling analyzed at once. The star map was four-dimensional, understandable only to four-dimensional beings. Full conversion of this four-dimensional star map into a three-dimensional projection will require 68 hours. Please wait. 68 hours, Zhongge muttered. Still need to convert it. What a pain. He turned to other duties. At the Megalith Fortress, Qin Yun and Ryan, amid discussions about the Imperium's clandestine affairs, also received Shieling's report. These players are moving fast, Qin Yun said. With the map solved, humanity could reach the ruins of the old ones and inherit lost technologies. Huang Laohan would be grinning. Good news came from other fronts. The Erlongu gang had recovered another fragment of Sanguinius's soul and were speeding to Divine World. Qin Yun paused, thinking about where a whole soul might be reclaimed. The Avenger of Souls, where Horus and the Emperor had fought, and where Sanguinius fell, was said to still harbor pieces of his essence. If even a fragment could be found there and reunited, perhaps Sanguinius could be reborn. The war for Alvin had ended in rivers of blood. The treasures of the past had resurfaced. The unresolved questions and the secrets of a four-dimensional map would take time, but the engines of fate were already turning.